all standing side by side watching this play out.
It is, and it comes after days of diplomacy. You know, just this weekend, China was hosting this regional security grouping called the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and the North Korean leader was not in that. He's not a member of that group, but Vladimir Putin was there, as was the Prime Minister of India and leaders of dozens of other countries, and the message there was much more pointed and directed at the U.S. and calling out bullying, in the words of the Chinese leader Xi Jinping, a Cold War mentality. These are all code words that he and the Russian President Vladimir Putin used to criticize international relations that they would argue have too long been dominated by the U.S., effectively since the collapse of the Soviet Union, and that these two leaders have chafed at, and they have been calling for what they claim would be a more equitable world order, a multipolar world order. So there is a lot of symbolism that we are seeing over the course of the last several days, from diplomacy now to military might. Caitlin.
Yeah, Ivan Watson will continue to check back in with you, keep us updated with what you're seeing on the ground in Beijing and on these just striking images that we're seeing here. I also want to bring in CNN's senior military analyst and former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, Admiral James Stavridis, who's joining me this hour. And Admiral, I mean, just to what Ivan was showing there, I mean, these pictures, just to see Kim Jong-un, Xi Jinping, Vladimir Putin all together. As someone with your experience, how do you see these? What does that say to you? What message does it send?
Let's start with the iconography here. Pretty powerful. You're seeing very capable, very sophisticated military aircraft. You're seeing bold young Chinese soldiers leaping into armored personnel carriers. I'll just make a side point here. China has not been in a significant war since the Korean War. They don't have a single admiral or general who's ever been in combat. They have had a dust up with Vietnam in the 1970s, a border skirmish with India. They're not an inexperienced military. You can make the argument, Caitlin, that's to their credit. They've avoided war. But significantly, if you had to stack up the U.S. armed forces, like it or not, we're a highly blooded armed force. We're quite experienced. I think that's a factor worth considering. Where I want to park is Ivan's excellent point about the diplomacy that preceded this. I'm less concerned about the parades and the sharp-looking troops and the jets. What I'm concerned about is the way, in particular, India and Modi appear to have really aligned themselves with China and Russia. That's where we really ought to focus here. Less on the military parade, more on the diplomacy.
Can I ask you that? Because the president actually just, clearly is also watching this and said tonight, the big question to be answered, I'm quoting President Trump now, is whether or not President Xi of China will mention the massive amount of support and blood the United States of America gave to China in order to help it secure its freedom from a very unfriendly foreign invader. He goes on to say, may President Xi and the wonderful people of China have a great and lasting day of celebration. He says, please give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un as you conspire against the United States of America.
That would be kind of the ultimate mixed message as far as I'm concerned. There is no doubt that Vladimir Putin is a malevolent force in the world. Kim Jong-un is running a criminal enterprise disguised as a nation, and both of them are being supported by China. That's unfortunate from a U.S. perspective. What we ought to do about it, Caitlin, back to India, we have to do everything we can to kind of pull India, the world's largest democracy, back toward the West and allowing them to drift into the orbit of Putin and Xi. Enormous diplomatic mistake.
Yeah, and of course, India is facing huge tariffs because of that. China is not facing tariffs because of the oil it's getting from Russia. Admiral James Stavridis will continue to watch all of this. It's always great to have your expertise here on the show, so thank you for joining.
Thanks, Kate.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell, and we are live streaming on Rumble, YouTube, and on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. We are doing this live stream on September 3rd. I will also replay this live stream on the multiple channels I have. So please subscribe to all the channels. I have 4 channels on YouTube: Brighteon, Bitchute, and Rumble. The links are in the description of this video and all my videos, so please subscribe to all the channels. You can also follow me on X and GETTR. Links are in the description. And you can listen to my podcast audio version on my website under Broadcast Radio and on Podomatic and Apple Podcast. All the links are in the description of this video and all my videos. So please make sure that you follow my work in the different modalities. Please help support the work that I do, because all these videos are for free. I don't put stuff behind a paywall. Please go to my website and donate. You can donate through Stripe, PayPal, or buy me a coffee on the homepage at the bottom of the page. You can also be a paid member to my Patreon channel. Again, I don't put stuff behind a paywall. All this coverage of the news and my perspective on different events, scientific discoveries, my op-eds, please help support by donating. And you can get the great products that I offer, the ebooks, the supplements, and the course material that I developed in pulmonology and immunology. Great way to help support the work that I do. And if you listen to the way you stack these supplements, you will slow down the aging process and have longevity. Now, when you do that, when you follow my advice, you're going to start noticing your body's healing and your immune system is getting better, your endocrine system is in homeostasis, and you have more energy and more vitality. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great, for example, structural nano silver soaps in lavender, in peppermint, lemongrass, and charcoal tea tree. Very high quality structural nano silver soaps. Get a few bars for your household. These are soaps that I use. So it's part of a healthcare protocol. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the very high quality structural nano silver soaps for your household. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. And if you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
Joining us right now with a look at the interest rate environment, President Trump's executive order aiming to broaden access to private markets and retirement plans, and so much more. We got a lot to talk to with this gentleman, Mark Lipschitz, your co-CEO of Blue Owl, oversees 200. I can't even believe this number now. This is crazy. We've known you a long time now. $284 billion in assets under management, sir.
Great to be here.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. It's very nice of you. Appreciate it.
Let's talk. Let's do interest rates real quick, and then I want to get to sort of the larger private markets situation.
Yeah.
I think we are going through almost a generational change in the financial market potentially. When you think about where the interest rates are today, you think about the Lisa Cook situation, you think about the tariff situation. Are you surprised that this is where we are?
So I'm thankful to be in the business we're in, where we do, as you know, products that are intended to be durable to whatever rate path we're on. So at some level, this sort of, what we call it, generally speaking, higher for longer, I'm not surprised about at all. You know, we've seen this, and we talked about this the last time we were together, when we just look at the fundamental, number one, just cost structure for American businesses in general. Well, certainly inflation is well off its peak. It's not gone. And number two, what's a normal cost of capital? Part of this is relative to what? We have this long distorted period of time where rates were zero. That's not normal. Having treasury rates in the 4-something range is rather normal.
But given everything you know from your own portfolio in terms of how businesses are doing, do you look and say, Jay Powell's too late and he really needs to cut interest rates? Or do you say, I don't know, I want to wait it out?
Business is good in our portfolio.
Okay.
The reality is we have about 400 companies now that we run capital to, almost all here in the U.S., so a reasonable indicator. and business is good. I mean, the last quarter's performance, on average, we had businesses were performing basically double-digit growth.
And so does that suggest, what does that suggest?
Well, it suggests to me the economy is sound and
You don't need to-
solid, so.
You don't need to go lower.
Look, I'm thankful that I don't have to forecast the rate, as I said,
Right.
so I don't know the right path. I have a lot of confidence in the Fed, and I have a lot of confidence that we'll get there, but I don't know if it needs to go lower sooner. I do say this with confidence. We're in a world where we're gonna be in I think higher rates overall for longer, number one, and two, there's a lot of exogenous variables that make it awfully hard to say the answer to.
Does this whole Fed independence idea concern you, and you think it will appear in rates at some point or in the market?
Look, at the end of the
moment, it does not.
At the end of the day, I think we have incredibly durable markets, and I have a lot of confidence in those markets. I really do. And we have a really durable economy at the moment. And now,
So you think all of this other stuff is noise to you? How do you?
I don't like to minimize the significance of anything when we're talking about Fed, the economy. But at the end of the day, I do believe we will be fine. We will endure through. And in the grand scheme of things, yes, a lot of this is noise as long as we continue to have a sound economy underneath it.
Mark, if you did think that the independence of the Fed was in jeopardy, that might actually appear on your radar screen at some point. Let me just say about Lisa Cook, because I know how we've covered it here. If she had 3 different properties, all listed as primary residences, and renting all of them out, if that actually turns out to be true, with what's alleged, would removing her trouble you in terms of this administration trying to pressure the Fed? Is that something that you would say, wow, I don't like this and I'm worried about Fed independence?
Yeah, we're way out of my depth now. I'm an expert in lending.
You're the person, you got 280
data centers for companies.
You would have thought the world was ending based on how certain places have covered this. So you're not ready to sell $284 billion worth of treasuries because of angst about this situation. That you haven't done one thing differently because of this?
We're here to provide capital.
That's what I mean. You're the one that's one of the people controlling where bond prices go.
We are certainly comfortable continuing to be a provider of capital. In fact, right now is a good time for us to provide our long
So this is part of the noise that been talking about noise a lot lately, and sometimes you have to ignore the noise to make your investment decisions, I guess.
We spend a lot of time looking for the signal.
Your business is crushing it. But unless they've got the right help desk software.
Oh man, it just won't stop.
Your agents can get caught in a whirl.
We spend a lot of time looking for the signal. That is for sure. And there are some wonderful things in the marketplace for us to fund. There are.
Let me ask you a different question, which is at the beginning of this, I said there's almost a generational change happening in the world of financials, if you will. This idea that comes from part of this new Trump bill to make private investments more accessible to the public, into possibly 401ks. It's possible we're going to see a flood of these sort of semi-liquid instruments and other kinds of things in the marketplace. Is this a good thing? Is this a dangerous thing? What is this to you?
Well phrased, which is to say there's this generational change, and that I think is real, and that is good. Will there be a flood? I hope not. There should not be. This is about walking before you're running. It's about creating an opportunity for retirees to participate selectively in private investments. There are clearly advantages to private investments. If you look, again, we're in a Monday.
In the private equity and private credit markets that are starting to permeate into the 401k realm, the average investor should stay away from them. It is not liquid. People will be attracted to the projected rates of return, but because it's not a very liquid market, it is going to burn a lot of people if they don't know what they're doing and if they have a time horizon that is not conducive to a 5 or 10 year time horizon. And you need to be a much more sophisticated type of investor to be getting into the private credit and private equity markets. And there is the derivatives that are being developed with the financial engineering of the private credit and private equity. For example, you have private equity companies coming in, buying distressed assets, distressed companies, but they have a good balance sheet, but poor income statement. They inject money into the business. Sounds great, right? You have a company coming in and helping another business out. They own the company now, the private equity, or a big part of the company. And then they take loans out, not on the assets of the private equity firm, but on the assets that are on the balance sheet of the company that they acquired. And that company now has to pay the loan. But it had this huge infusion of money from the private equity and from the banking industry. The company is now paying the loans off over time. There's some restructuring going on because there's a team of consultants that come in to restructure the company. Some assets are sold. There's hopefully better profitability. And what will happen is that the company that's been acquired will have to pay the private equity firm through a profit or through sales, and some of that from the actual loans that came from the bank back to the private equity company, more than what they actually put in. So let's say they put in $20 million to acquire a company, and that company took a $100 million loan. And let's say assets are $200 million, all right, before the loan. The private equity company will get that more than the money that they put in. And the company is still on the hook for this added debt that's on the balance sheet. And then usually it collapses. The private equity company doesn't care because they put in 20, they get maybe 40, and they just made $20 million and they destroyed a company. Who's on the hook? The bank. So this world can be really shady in terms of the private equity markets. Now you get into the whole derivatives situation. Let's say they keep the company afloat for a while, and the private equity does 10 businesses like this. And they have cash flows that are coming in from these different companies that they bought. Well, the private equity company could do a securitization of these cash flows and sell that security, that cash flow backed obligation, to the market. Or the bank could do the loans that they issued to the company that was being acquired and wrap all these different loans that they made. And because certain cash flows are coming in, they'll be able to support this debt obligation derivative. The problem comes in is when there's a good portion of these companies that start to fail. And it's the exact same problem that happened with the mortgage-backed securities back during the Lehman time. So you're getting into a situation where more and more people do this, more and more chance of securitization, more and more chance of systemic risk, more and more chance of contagion, more and more chance of economic turmoil, especially when the economy goes into its normal cycle of recession. You have recessions and expansions, but if you have a private equity firm that bought in at, let's say, near the top of a cycle, and then all of a sudden a lot of their portfolio is starting to hurt and they want to get out, they're going to rush and get those cash flows from the balance sheet back to the equity firm before the company goes out of business. And when a lot of these private equity companies are doing that, then you're going to start seeing that these debt obligations that were sold to the market in packages similar to the mortgage-backed securities are starting to default. So you have the derivatives market defaulting. You have companies going out of business or having financial problems because of this new recession that will be coming. So you have to be a really, really savvy investor, which most people are not, to be getting into private equity and private credit markets. So my recommendation is never, ever, 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 ever put your 401k in a private equity or private credit fund. It's a scam.
Side of the private investment world, right? We do things like direct lending. But in direct lending, the data over any
This whole direct lending is the private credit, the private credit aspect. Same issue with the private credit. And they're not regulated like a bank. So obviously, if something's not regulated, you're going to have a problem. In addition, the private credit and the private equity markets are not liquid. There's not a clearinghouse for it that's to be able to buy or sell easily the underlying of the because it's private. When you're trying to sell a business, do you think it's really that liquid? It's not. A home is not really that liquid, but a business is even more illiquid. So when you have a derivatives market that could easily seem liquid in the financial markets, become illiquid very quickly. The underlying of those derivatives are very illiquid. And a lot of these funds, a lot of these private equity funds, private equity companies that you invest in, you can't pull the money out until 5 years. Well, that doesn't seem that safe. It's a scam. It's a scam. A lot of people are going to fall for it, and there's going to be problems. Now, people like myself see this. If a lot of people go into this, then there are going to be a lot of people that are going to start waiting for the stress, especially during a recession, and then short the market, and you're going to make a lot of money.
Look over a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, rough justice. You have private lending performing about twice as well as the liquid alternative, about 5% of the liquid market, 9-10%.
Here's the issue or the concern that I have in terms of how you make it right. One is the disclosure that comes from a private institution is obviously not nearly as robust as what you get from a public institution. That allows potentially for fraud or other things. I'm not suggesting that's going to happen from you, but from others, you just don't know, right? Two, you have this semi-liquid, sometimes, depending on what the vehicle is, these semi-liquid vehicles, which in theory work when they work, but in theory actually don't work when they don't work. Like that's actually part of the theory, which is they're built so that, you know, firms can put up gates effectively, and that creates its own problem on the other end. And so, yes, if you're a retiree, and look, if you have 20, 30 years, maybe this is a fabulous way to do it. The question is, if you're hitting 65 years old and all of a sudden you need that money, now I'm looking very far out, and in that moment you can't get the money, well, that's a whole other problem.
This is about doing it right, and I agree with you. I'm not an advocate for all alts all the time, you know, let's sort of, you know, spam the waterfront. I think what we ought to be doing, though, is making prudent options available for sure, because today we have this odd island around 401ks. Remember, other retirees are benefiting from direct lending, from private real assets or GP stakes, because they're part of defined benefit plans. So we have this island we've created, and I genuinely say it's not fair to those retirees. Now, they do need to be well advised. It should be well regulated. I'm sure the DLL will do it.
Let me throw one other thing into the mix right now, and it's a sort of current issue. Most private equity firms right now are holding onto a portfolio that they can't exit from. And the only exits that are really happening are these sort of what I call hot potato deals, where everyone's selling the pieces of their portfolio to each other, frankly. And there's all sorts of marketing games, which is another piece of this problem in terms of disclosure. But nonetheless, my concern is you have a flood of retail capital that comes into this space, and this becomes the opportunity set for all of these exits. And who is holding the bag? The retail folks.
So we're not in private equity, no. my strong view is let's start in the places that are lower volatility. Let's start in the places that are safer. We don't have that issue in private credit. We don't have that in real assets. Let's do data centers where Microsoft is a tenant. There's a lot of very low volatility, low risk ways to participate. Let's work with great our partners, Voya, incredibly prudent firm. These are people that take care of their 10 million clients. So it has to be done right. Again, you will not hear me say this is about let's just go for it all the way in. Let's in fact start with some really good products. Let's do this smart. Let's do it well, and that will be good for retirees, and that will be good for our age.
It's gonna blow up.
At KPMG, we make
So what's gonna happen?
by prioritizing data.
That type of investing is going to be toxic during the next recession. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get these supplements to start with the foundation to build your customized health protocol. You start with a multivitamin and a probiotic. I have the complete multivitamin. This is easy to digest and has the multivitamins that you need as cofactors for enzymatic activity so your cells perform properly. This is a great supplement to start your health care protocol. Now, I have two different types of probiotics. I have the veggie cap version, which is the MB40 probiotic, and the powdered version. Now, if you take a lot of different powders as supplements, it's probably best to take the powdered version. If not, then take the veggie cap version. Both are very high quality probiotics. Now, with a good probiotic, you're going to be able to improve your gut biome, improve your immune system, increase the mucosal lining of your gut. Your IgAs will increase in concentration, so your immune system will be better. You'll be able to digest your foods better. And you'll have a better communication between your gut and your liver and your gut and your brain. That means that you're going to have better metabolism, and you're going to be able to have more mental acuity and more mental clarity. You're going to sleep better. You're going to consolidate memory better. You're going to improve your skin, because a bad gut biome usually manifests in skin issues. So you get lots of benefits from having a good gut biome. It starts at the gut. Good health starts at the gut. So it's important to take a good probiotic. So I have the MB40 probiotic and the powdered version, powder probiotic. So take either one, take it every day, and take it with your complete multivitamin. That's a great foundation to build off of for an anti-aging protocol. I'll tell you how I do it. You can customize it based on your affordability and what you want to target. But if you follow my advice, you're going to notice that you're slowing down the aging process. You're going to be boosting up energy levels. You're going to be boosting up your immune system, your endocrine system, and your brain function, and helping with your cardiovascular health. So pay attention throughout this broadcast. And if you do what I tell you to do, you're going to benefit from it. All right, now. Let's listen in to Avenue Capital.
With YouTube Premium, watch ad-free videos and listen ad-free on the YouTube Music app. That's right, one subscription, 2 ads.
Let's talk markets, the Fed, investing in sports, and much more. Joining us right now is Mark Lasry. He is Avenue Capital Group Chairman, the CEO, and the co-founder, also a good friend of Squawk, and it's great to have you here, Mark.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I want to dig into sports, but let's hold off on that because I think it's probably more important to talk broader markets right now. There's a lot of questions about what's going to happen with the tariff right now.
Yeah.
Those questions didn't seem to do very well for the stock market yesterday because it just means more uncertainty. You're on the record from back in March saying that all of these tariffs would not be good for the economy, that it would be very hard for the economy to survive with them. Have you changed your thought process after what you've seen the last 6 months or so?
I've actually been surprised at how resilient the market is. I really have. But I do think as you have higher tariffs, you just have higher pricing. And the economy has been able to deal with that. So I guess for me, I actually thought if you had higher tariffs, you're going to have lower rates. And you're still a little ways away from that. But everything's about the economy. So if the economy is holding up, tariffs are fine. If the economy isn't holding up, then you better either have lower rates or lower tariffs.
What do you do as an expert in distressed debt? Where do you find things these days? Where are opportunities? Have you been irritated that you haven't been able to find better deals?
Yeah, it's harder. I'm not going to tell you it's not. You need problems. So I think for us, the only thing we're really doing today is more, there's less distress, but you're lending money. People need capital. They need short-term capital. So we've been doing that. You've got more opportunities, I would say, in Europe. You've got more opportunities in Asia. The US market has been really resilient. So I think for us, there's just less to do here.
Who do you lend money to in places like Europe and Asia, and what kind of rates can you get?
You're able to get about, I would say, sort of 12-15%.
Wow, the 15%.
Yeah. People need money. They need short-term capital. So people lend. Nobody can survive if they're borrowing money at 12-15 for 5 years, right? Everybody, it's more for a year, 2 years until they sort of turn things around. But a lot of it is they've got the assets there. So for us, we're happy to lend. The problem for a bank is a bank's going to look at that and say, look, I only want to lend to you if you've got a certain amount of cash flow. For us, we're happy to do it based on the value of the assets.
Because you get the asset if anything goes awry. If the Fed lowers rates, how does that change that business for you?
It changes it. I mean, you're going to be charging less. I mean, normally what you're doing is you're charging somewhere around sort of 500, 700 over SOFR. So wherever SOFR is, it's the same thing for us.
And I would assume that normally if the Fed's lowering rates, it's because the economy's in trouble somewhere else, so you can swing back into the distress side. Do you see that happening this time around?
I think it takes time. I think rates, if they go down, they'll go down about 50 bips. I don't think they're really going to go down 1% or 2%. So I think the perception is that things are going to be better. People will be able to borrow. You need to have rates go down 1 or 2%, which means that there's real problems in the economy.
Do market valuations at this point make sense to you? We've heard a lot of people saying, hey, it's really expensive right now, but then we have people saying earnings keep delivering.
I think it's expensive. I mean, for what we do, we like to buy things at a discount. I think today it's hard to buy those things at a discount, and that's fine. You just wait. You just have to be patient. I think you get in trouble when you feel like you've got to do things you normally don't do. So for us, if we're not seeing opportunities here, we'll go to Europe, we'll go to Asia. There's always people who need money around the world, and we're a global firm, so we can find that.
We just had the CEO of a Blue Owl on, and we were talking just about how in private equity land, there's so many assets that are just locked up.
Yeah.
Nobody can exit anything right now. And there's also a move afoot to democratize private equity and venture capital into 401k plans and other things through these sort of semi-liquid vehicles. And whether this is going to be a great boon and a fabulous thing for retail investors and others, or this is going to be some kind of crazy exit opportunity for private equity folks who've been locked in something to hand it off to those who may not know exactly what's happening.
Look, it's a great question. I think it's hard. I think it's hard to end up having something that is illiquid and very much illiquid, and having private investors come in who love liquidity. That to me is really the issue. It's not being sold, look, give us money and you got to hold on and it'll be fine for 10 years. It's give us capital, that's fine, and we're going to provide you liquidity. Look, to me, you've just got to be logical. If you're giving somebody money for 10 years, you can't expect that you're going to have liquidity next month or next year. And that's what you're having in all these, I think all these programs that are being set up is this perception that you're going to have liquidity when I don't think it's really going to be there.
And therefore, that's going to do what? Oh, it's going to take down this whole alts idea. I mean, does it end well? Does it end badly? I mean, I do think long term, you think the idea of allowing people in their 401ks to get access to, opportunities that have worked out a lot better for frankly wealthy people who've had access to it should be a good thing. But you speak to this sort of the peril of it at the same time.
I think to me, when you're investing in private equity, you're saying I don't mind having my money locked up for 10 years. Right? I think for small investors, that's just very different. I really do. I mean, because they don't have access to capital as easily. So if there's a problem and they need that capital, they're going to end up having to sell that at a big discount. And there'll be people like me who will buy that at a discount. And ultimately, that's not great.
Now think about what he just said. And this is exactly what I'm saying. It's a scam. What they're going to do is that they're going to have a Joe Public in their 401k or in some sort of fund that they've created, right? The investor, where they buy these ETFs or different private equity companies, all right, and they invest in this. And they buy in, let's say they put $100,000 into an ETF that's tied to private credit and private equity. Now, the investor can buy and sell anytime. But the thing is that these ETFs the underlying are assets that are wrapped up for 5 or 10 years. And let's say the economy starts to tank and an investor is worried. And so they're going to be quick to sell. And because that underlying isn't liquid, the fall of these ETFs that are tied to the underlying will fall faster probably than the actual broader market. So this is what we call beta. Beta is probably a lot higher with these ETFs that are tied to private equity. So when beta is higher and the market sells off, you're going to lose more money. So the investor, Joe Public, is going to sell. And then this guy will pick it up for pennies on the dollar because he can wait out the mean reversion in the market. They want you to do this, so they make even more money. It's a scam.
Did you get caught unprepared for the elements? You need the Bearskin Tactical Hoodie 4.0. It's the ultimate 10-pocket.
It's a scam. It's a scam. Don't get into ETFs that are tied to private equity or private credit, and do not invest directly in private equity companies or private debt companies. Most investors will not be able to weather the storm. All right, let's go to the BBC here, talking about China, North Korea, and Russia. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc. Magnesium and zinc will help to boost up your immune system and improve your brain function. Magnesium also helps to increase the efficacy of vitamin D3. Take magnesium and zinc, take it every day. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. Boost up that immune system and improve your brain function. Now, in terms of the markets, the S&P 500 is trading at 6,438. The VIX is trading at 17. Euro is at 1.16. Oil is trading at $64.22. BITO is trading at 19.27. Bitcoin is at 112,000. Japanese yen is trading at 148.7. Natural gas is trading at 3.085. Again, I still have a year-end target for the S&P 500 at 6,800 or between 6,800 to 7,000, especially when the Federal Reserve lowers its rate. And there is a resistance level at 6,500 for the S&P 500 with a support level of 6,250.
Hello, I'm Lucy Hawkins. Good to have you with us on BBC News Now. Let's take you back to our top story this hour, to China. They have held a massive military parade in Beijing, the biggest ever, unveiling what appears to be a new arsenal of high-tech weapons, celebrating the end of the Second World War in Asia. Our China correspondent, Steve McDonald, has the latest for us.
So the parade is over here, and we are seeing traffic return to the streets of Beijing. It's not as busy as a normal working day yet, but the city's starting to get back to normal. And now it's a time to reflect on what this was all about. Now, naturally, it was a parade to mark the end of World War II in Asia. The Chinese government has also used it to show off its latest military kit. We've seen jets, helicopters, tanks, armored cars, underwater drones, lasers, intercontinental ballistic missiles. For this reason, some have questioned the event and said, really, should we...
And all that money that's going into their military industrial complex was brought to you by Wall Street, telling you that you need to invest in the emerging markets, especially right after Lehman. And that's where you were going to get all your yield. You know what happened with Bernanke when he did all that quantitative easing called hot money? That hot money was taken by Wall Street in funds and moved it overseas to grow the economy in China. And now, fast forward to 2025, and you got saddle rattling in a parade with all these new wonderful toys that they developed because the American public wanted cheap spatulas at Walmart. But the people on Wall Street, they made a ton of money doing it. So to finance the war, I suggest that maybe we should tax Wall Street and the uber wealthy at a much higher rate for the ill gains that they made during the push to invest in China that ended up building up our enemy. So instead of them buying a $250 million yacht, maybe that $250 million should be going into our war effort against China.
Worried that this country might start using these weapons as it flexes its muscles on the world stage. Xi Jinping would say, no, you shouldn't be worried because this is actually peace through strength. Well, that's his argument anyway. Then there's the political aspect of this. China's leader, these other world leaders, including the likes of Kim Jong-un from North Korea and Vladimir Putin from Russia. Now, he's accused of being a war criminal after invading Ukraine, and yet there they all are. It's a kind of challenge to the West, saying we don't care about your sanctions, we can gather like this. And the argument would be that the West's influence is in decline because of the collapse of the leadership of the United States under Donald Trump. The US is going alone, it's putting tariffs on its allies. Here's Xi Jinping with a message of stability. You can rely on this country, and maybe it would be appealing to other countries. And yet others would say that really what Xi Jinping is doing is offering support to other authoritarian leaders. They might not mind though. There they all are up on Tiananmen Gate, watching the parade going through. And yet some in China have also questioned, is this how their country should be portrayed to the rest of the world? Military parades in this day and age? Isn't it something out of the Cold War? What about the new China, the China of ideas? Whatever happened to that? And yet others, of course, especially those with a bit more of a nationalist bent, might love it. They might think, you know, people used to walk all over us. Now China fears no one. And look at all that equipment. Of course, the Chinese government, if the worst from all of this is that others would fear them, maybe they'd take that. Of course, one of the key messages from today is that you can't push China around anymore.
Super Dawn there in Beijing. President Trump, of course, not at the parade. He's made his views clear, though, on social media, talking about how many Americans died in China's quest for victory and glory. Let's have a look at this post on Truth Social, where he said President Xi and the wonderful people of China had a great and lasting day of celebration. But then he ended the post by saying, please give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un as you conspire against the United States of America. The Kremlin's responded, saying Mr. Trump's comments were probably an ironic joke. Let's speak to Naomi Lim now, White House reporter at the Washington Examiner. Lots of different views on what exactly it is President Trump meant in this social media post. Naomi, what do you think? What are others saying?
So I have asked the White House for clarification on it because it is a little bit different from what we...
The United States in the Pacific lost a lot of soldiers to fight against Japan. Now, in addition, it was through Nixon and Kissinger that opened up the gates for Mao to get more integrated. Now, we use that as a Cold War strategy to wedge between China and the Soviet Union at the time. But the United States is what built up China, not the Chinese building up China. Now, unfortunately, stupid people like from the administration of Clinton thought it was a great idea to ship jobs overseas. Now, when you don't make something, you don't innovate. See, there's invention and innovation. Most economic growth doesn't come from invention, it comes from innovation. And innovation is little improvements of processes, of materials, of how something's made. And it eventually evolves, and it creates a lot of economic clustering. You get more benefit through innovation than invention. But you have to make it and design it to have innovation. When you ship that away, and all you're doing is pushing paper, you don't innovate. And therefore, you start becoming less knowledgeable how stuff is made and how to improve it. But Wall Street thought it was better to just push paper. So what it really means is that the United States built up China. The United States won the war in the Pacific. The United States opened up the doors because of a geopolitical strategy by Kissinger for China to benefit economically. And now the United States is going to have to spend lots of money, blood, and treasure to circumvent the rising of China's military industrial complex. Because you needed to buy cheap shit from Walmart.
Him say in the Oval Office yesterday. A BBC colleague of yours actually asked him, whether he is worried that China is setting itself up as a sort of, another option in terms of leadership in the world. And he downplayed the concerns. He sort of said, no, he doesn't believe that that is the case. In fact, China needs the US, whether it's economically, particularly as the tariff war and trade deals are ongoing. And so I think that, there's this sort of, approach to foreign policy within the Trump administration that I think they're still figuring out, because we even saw in the Oval Office yesterday, I assumed going into the day that they would try to, portray strength or something like that to, create this political split screen from what we've been seeing all weekend from China. Not only was the meeting, there were high-profile meetings between President Xi and President Modi of India, but now obviously this huge military display. And we were sort of surprised yesterday because it was mainly an announcement about the US Space Force. And so I think we'll see sort of an adjustment with that today, particularly after we saw this Truth Social post from the president.
Do you think your CPA is helping you save money on taxes? think again. Most CPAs are tax preparers, not tax strategists.
Okay, there's a slew of economic data that's coming in that hopefully when we transition to Bloomberg, we'll be listening in. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. Zeolite will help to detoxify your body. It's going to help to remove heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue, drink the filtered water, and that'll allow you to urinate out those toxins within 6 to 8 hours. Now, zeolite should be taken every day. You can do a heavier detox by taking 10 small drops underneath your tongue, drinking the filtered water, and do that every day until the bottle is done, and do that once or twice a year. But it's better to actually do 3 small drops underneath your tongue and do it every day. Also, make sure you drink filtered water and stay away from processed foods. Clean your environment, get rid of chemicals that are in your environment, and if you have cleaning solutions that you have to have or paints, put it in a double sealed container. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the zeolite. Very high quality way to detoxify your body.
There's new video of a famous shipwreck off the coast of Greenland.
The SS Terra Nova carried Captain Robert Scott and his team to their fatal expedition to the South Pole in 1910. The ship was used commercially until 1943 when it sank off Greenland's south coast. Now, Leighton Raleigh and his fellow researchers at Rev Ocean have conducted the first visual survey of the shipwreck. They got great video of the ship's wheel.
When you think of the people who have stood there, maneuvered, that's having over through ice and various things like Captain Scott, it was like, wow.
The shipwreck has become a colorful reef. Michael Wallace, CBS News.
A jury in LA has found Cardi B not liable in a $24 million civil lawsuit filed by a Beverly Hills security guard who accused the rapper of assaulting her with her spiky fingernail extensions outside a doctor's office.
Even if I'm in my deathbed, I swear to God, I will say it in my deathbed, I did not touch that woman.
Deborah Rodriguez, CBS News.
This is Bloomberg Intelligence with Scarlett Fu and Paul Sweeney.
How do you think the Fed is looking at tariffs, the uncertainty of tariffs?
Let's take a look at the sectors and how they performed.
A lot of investors getting whipsawed every day by news events.
Breaking market headlines and corporate news from across the globe.
Could we see a market disruption, a market event?
Are people just too exuberant out there?
We see some so-called low-quality stocks driving this short-term rally.
Bloomberg Intelligence with Scarlett Fu and Paul Sweeney.
There's a news announcement. Macy's, the retailer, Macy's shares jumped 20% as retailer tops earning estimates, raises outlook.
Mine is Scarlett Fu, Paul Sweeney, live with you here today. Coming up, we're going to check in with Ira Jersey, Bloomberg Intelligence Chief U.S. interest rate strategist, and his thoughts on the Fed here and what's the next move. Mark Cottrell, Senior Portfolio Manager at Allspring Global Investments up there in Boston. So we'll get started. Market call. Randall Williams, Bloomberg Business and Sports reporter. I sense a theme here, Scarlett. Business of sports.
I'm forcing this into the rundown every day.
I love it. This is awesome. There's so much to talk about all the time. And it's big money, too. So we'll check in with Randall and see what he's got for us. Mark Gervin walking the hallways here in New York. He's based in our LA bureau. He breaks everything on Apple. So we'll get his latest thoughts on what's happening with Apple. So we got a lot coming up in the next couple of hours. Let's kick it off as we do. Mr. John Tucker of Bloomberg.
All right, this Bloomberg Business Flash, guys, brought to you by IBKR Financial Advisors. Switch to Interactive Brokers for lowest cost global trading and turnkey custody solutions. No ticket charges, no conflicts of your interest. Learn more at ibkr.com/RIA. We're data dependent, so let's start there. This is the job opening labor turnover survey. Coming in lighter than expected, an annual rate of 7.181 million. The expectation was for higher, that close to 7.4 million. Now, having said all that, Mike McKee was in the studio earlier today with us talking about JOLTS, saying JOLTS don't matter because nobody's hiring. So put that in your pipe and smoke it. Google avoiding a breakup. That's enough to power tech hire. Alphabet, right now the best performing individual stock of the S&P 500. They also keep paying Apple to make Google the default search engine. So Apple is higher. Shares right now of Alphabet, Google, 8.3% higher. Apple shares, they're up 2.3%. Dollar Tree, worst performer, the S&P 500, that was down somewhere around 8%. Profit for the current quarter will be a little changed as the lift from price hikes kind of peters out. Earnings outlook this quarter points to a tougher second half of the year. They have Macy's raising its annual outlook, reporting best comp sales in 3 years. Macy's up 18.9%. Overall, the S&P 500 up 23 points. That's a rise of 0.4% at 64.39. The Dow Jones Industrial Average down 182 points, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq 100 up 177 points. That is up 0.75%. I'll leave you with the yields. The 30-year, it was rushing against 5% earlier. Right now, 5 basis points lower. It is at 4.91. A lot of corporate issuance this week as well. We check the markets for you all day long. Right here on Bloomberg Radio, I'm John Tucker. That's your Bloomberg Business Flash. Scarlet and Paul. Day 2 of Scarlet.
Exactly. It's even better.
Are we going to keep counting down like every day?
Yeah, John.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Day 327.
Like day 28.
John Tucker, thank you so much. We appreciate that. As John was just saying, red and green on the screen. Let's take a look at some of the stocks on the move today. I'm Paul Sweeney alongside Scarlett Fu. We're joined by Bloomberg's Christine. Christine, what do you think?
We got to talk about Google, Paul.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, top story
as
today.
good of a ruling as I think it could have been.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, so, and the shares are reflecting that as well. So Alphabet, of course, the parent company of Google, ticker GOOGL. Those shares are extending gains now, up nearly 9%. So that opened around 7% higher. It just keeps going. And it is specifically, as Paul mentioned, because of this favorable ruling in its antitrust case, which essentially allowed the company to avoid a forced sale of its Chrome browser. So that was the most important thing hanging in the balance there. So interestingly, so the judge last year, Judge Amit Mehta, actually ruled that Google illegally monopolized the search market through exclusive deals. But then in a judgment on Tuesday, he wrote that the emergence of Gen AI changed the course of this case. Very interesting.
So it sounds like he listened to Google's defense.
Exactly.
And was like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So it seemed like it was definitely worth it for Alphabet to appeal that case. And no, the ruling, though, will still have Alphabet make some concessions, like including sharing their online search data with rivals and ending exclusive contracts for distribution. But the big prize was avoiding the sale of Chrome.
And Larry Page and Sergey Brin, the co-founders, each going to be making, on paper, $15 billion today.
Not bad.
In the search.
Not bad.
So they are number 5 and 6 on the rich go top earners, wealth people out there. So there you go. All right, what do you got?
Looking at Dollar Tree as well, John Tucker was talking about this earlier today, so let's dig into it. So those shares, ticker DLT, are extending declines, so down just over 8% at the moment. So, John mentioned it was supposed to be a good quarter. They reported a beat and raise quarter, but the kicker was the second quarter EPS. It was a beat of 34 cents, but that also included a 20-cent positive impact from timing of inventory mark-on and tariffs, and the company expects that to reverse in the third quarter. Now, the other thing that analysts are looking at here, not so positively, is the fact that their comp sales guidance for the full year is at 4% to 6%. But then if you take into account that they already grew more than 5% in the first quarter and more than 6% in the second quarter, that actually implies a little bit of a deceleration in the back half of the year. So Bernstein analysts saying that they're just not convinced that momentum that we saw in the second quarter is sustainable. So we'll see.
Campbell Soup.
Campbell Soup.
All right, here's my Campbell Soup go-to. If anybody's got a go-to, let me know. Manhattan clam chowder.
Oh, I love that one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I really like that one over New England clam chowder, which I feel is
Baker
too
of
much.
Milano's.
See, that's my go-to. I'm not going to Campbell's for soup, but yes, Campbell's, ticker CPV, those shares are up more than 4%. And, the focus here is, of course, second quarter adjusted EPS at 62 cents, beating estimates for 56 cents. And according to CEO Mick Bakehausen, that's hysterical, Mick Bakehausen, the bright spot for the company was cookies.
We're going to go to MSNBC talking about the parade in China.
Yes, I'm on row. They say GLP-1s for weight loss is a shortcut.
So let's get to our top story. Dozens of world leaders gathered in China as President Xi Jinping showcased his country's military force. Russia's Vladimir Putin and North Korea's Kim Jong-un attended the massive parade to mark the 80th anniversary of the end of World War II in Beijing. Fighter jets, tanks, and
because they had so much to do with Japan losing, yes.
Thousands of troops marched across Tiananmen Square. The event appeared to send a message to Western countries that China can be a formidable military adversary. President Xi even told spectators the world is facing a choice between peace or war. In response, President Trump wrote on.
But the Americans, through their FDI, especially with the hot money, when Bernanke was printing at the Federal Reserve after the Lehman crash, built up China. That's what the United States did. And now the United States has to destroy it.
Truth Social, quote, please give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un as you conspire against the United States of America. That's all very
Ian, as you see that picture of those three men walking up the red carpet together, as you saw Putin holding hands literally with Modi a couple of days ago, and this group of leaders that have gathered now in Beijing to watch the military hardware pass today. If you're sitting in Washington right now, what do you see?
They said it's not relevant. It's what we're doing in the United States. We're the biggest, we're the baddest, we're the most powerful. This is not happening.
Damn it.
Something less powerful. It's happening because the United States is.
Let me just reset this.
Around the world is less predictable and less reliable by its adversaries and by its friends.
I have issues with the speaker again.
The most powerful. This is not happening because the United.
Why the hell is this not working?
Not going anywhere. Jinping not going anywhere, right? He's leader. Aren't seeing that. They don't care. They said it's not relevant. It's what we're doing in the United States. We're the biggest, we're the baddest, we're the most powerful. This is not happening because the United States is suddenly less powerful. It's happening because the United States is perceived around the world as less predictable and less reliable by its adversaries and by its friends. And Xi Jinping sees an opportunity. Communist Party not going anywhere. Xi Jinping not going anywhere, right? He's leader for life. He's ended term limits. And his ability to say, I'll continue to stand strong with multilateral institutions. I'll continue to agree with treaties that I've signed, that my country signed over decades. You should be betting on me, even though I'm small. By the way, just explain to our friends that are watching today, it's not just other autocrats who say that. It's governments in the Middle East.
But the instability of American foreign policy and its usage of sanctions as a tool or weaponizing the dollar go back in recent time to 9/11. In the Bush administration. This is not a Trump issue. This is actually a neocon issue.
Who will say that as well. Well, I know when those are autocrats too, but yes, I agree.
Well,
But the Canadians will say that.
The Canadians will say that. Canadians will say that.
Yes.
Others will say that. And what they say is, you know what? If I deal with China,
In 5-10 years, I have no idea what you guys are going to do in 4 weeks. And they've said this for years, and I always explain, that's because we're a democracy. And
you know, people dictators for life. But that is out there.
It's not just, if it were just that, if it were just that the United States shifts on policies, but still can be counted on for things that they have agreed to internationally. And this is not just about Trump, right? I mean, it was Obama that got everyone really jammed up about the Trans-Pacific Partnership and then couldn't get it done himself. It was Hillary Clinton and Trump that both said in that election, well, we're not touching that. We're not going ahead with that. But it's also things like the JCPOA, the Iranian nuclear deal. You're in it, then you're out of it. Your own deal. It's the Paris Climate Accord. You're in it, then you're out of it. It's treaties on tariffs that you rip up overnight, like USMCA, Trump's own deal that he decided, well, actually, I'm not going to adhere to the terms of what I signed before because it no longer benefits me, the United States. Now, geopolitically, the big thing that's happened over the last 30 years is China rising and America's allies getting weaker. It's not the United States getting weaker, it's its allies getting weaker. But the correct response, from my perspective, is that the U.S. president should be saying...
Who are the main allies? Germany, France, UK. Why are they getting weaker? Because they have too much debt. Why do they have too much debt? Because their social programs. They have socialistic policies that led to a debt cliff and a doom loop and higher interest rates on their sovereign bonds. That's why. Socialism doesn't work.
We want our allies to be stronger. Right after World War II, what did we do? We wanted our allies to be stronger. Here, we're saying, no, we have a sense of grievance. We want to ground our allies into the dirt. Doesn't matter whether you like us or dislike us.
No, wait. But the issue, especially in recent time, the last 25 years, these countries, our allies, kept on issuing more social programs to their society and expected the United States taxpayer to foot the bill for their protection through NATO. So they should have been more an equal partner, or at least paid in at the appropriate level into NATO, instead of thinking that the American taxpayer is just going to keep on doing it and that they can issue these bonds and provide social programs to their society that they can't really afford.
We're in the stronger position. You've got to listen to us. And the only leader out there that's been really capable of saying no without consequences has been Xi Jinping. Modi has said no with big consequences for his economy, big consequences for his ongoing relationship with the U.S. In Brazil, Lula has said no with big consequences, right, for his country, for his economy. Xi Jinping has said no. Turns out he has the cards. His ability to cut the Americans off with licenses on critical minerals and technology that is well beyond what the United States or anyone else has on post-carbon energy made Trump back down and say, okay, I want a summit. I want to engage. And I will even take off the export controls on semiconductors that have been the critical advantage the U.S. has in maintaining a lead on artificial intelligence. Well, it turns out in Beijing, you've got a country with the cards. In the United States, you've got a country with the cards. And everyone else is trying to figure out a way to navigate this. This isn't a new Beijing-led order, but it certainly isn't a U.S.-led order, and that's what I think we're all dealing with.
And Gene Robinson, to Ian's point, it's sort of unthinkable that collection of world leaders could occur if it weren't for some of the tumultuous stances and policies of President Trump. But and war in Ukraine, of course, shadows the gathering today. Vladimir Putin there, unbowed, just a few weeks from Anchorage. He hasn't done anything to take a step towards peace. In fact, only accelerated his attacks in Ukraine. And one has to wonder, with that display of Chinese military hardware, how this is being perceived in Taiwan.
Right, exactly. In Taiwan, I'm sure they look at this in horror, and they say we are next. We're on deck. I mean, I try to imagine the private conversations between Putin and Xi, and they must be saying, can you imagine our luck, right? Can you imagine, because the United States is making it so easy for them. We're making it easier for Putin to continue this war of conquest in Ukraine. We're making it easier for China to go out and say, look, we're the dependable ones. We will keep to our promises and our commitments and our treaties. You really need to deal with us because the United States can't be trusted, can't be relied on, and they have a point right now. And so we are just making it easier for these autocratic adversaries. Look, they're not defining the whole world order at this point, but they have carved out a big space for themselves in the developing new world order that will be difficult to reduce.
Elizabeth, one thing I think that we can all agree on, that the United States needs more friends around the world. We've been dropping friendships, apparently, for the last couple of years and longer than that. But one of the more critical friendships that would need to go on if we want to continue to prosper in this country is the friendship between the United States and India. And the rupture between the relationship between President Trump and Modi, there's ill will for this country. I wonder, in your opinion, what do you hear in Washington about that rupture of the friendship in terms of its long and short-term relationship with India?
Well, I lived in India for 3.5 years, actually, in the 1980s. So this is kind of an incredible turn of events because for so long the United States was leaned towards Pakistan, but then over the years there was a real embrace of India as a counterweight to China, and that continued until fairly recently, and until there was a very bad conversation between Modi, the Prime Minister of India, and Donald Trump. Donald Trump wanted credit for solving the latest flare between India and Pakistan, and felt that he deserved credit for it. He also wanted Modi to nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize, as Pakistan had promised to do. It's hard to believe that this is something that made a difference in their relationship, but apparently it did. But there's been a real rupture. What you see in these pictures, these incredible videos out of Beijing, is just this parade of autocrats who have been pushed together in many cases by Donald Trump. Look what happened, after Anchorage. Nothing happened, and there is Putin holding hands, with Xi. The other thing I just want to say, looking at these videos, is remember the military parade that we had in Washington over the 4th of July? I have to say, the U.S. military is the strongest in the world. I used to cover the Pentagon, but the Chinese know how to put on a military parade, quite different from the one that was carried on in the United States. We don't have goose-stepping troops in the street, and we don't have that kind of precision. So it's a big show for China.
Ian, I'm reading a report here. Jake Sullivan, of course, former National Security Advisor, says that business dealings may have something to do with Pakistan, with the crypto deal. Yeah. The Trump family, according to reports, and to have a major windfall from a crypto deal with Pakistan.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was going.
It was Jake Sullivan who brought it up.
But we are on the table here, right? I mean, the fact is that most of Trump's foreign policy, first term and this term, a lot of it is capricious. A lot of it is driven by what he wants personally, and whether you, as a leader, are suitably deferential. But it's not necessarily business driven. Here we have a geopolitical shift that arguably personal business of Trump's family extended network is actually driving a change in U.S. policy that does matter. I don't believe that the rift between the United States and India, Trump and Modi, is only about the fact that Trump wanted a Nobel and Modi said, I'm not going to give you credit. This was just India and Pakistan. And frankly, the truth is somewhere in the middle there. The U.S. was involved with Pakistan.
Which, by the way, the Pakistanis
said yes.
Said yes, you should get a Nobel Prize. The Pakistanis did a crypto deal. The Pakistanis said they would do a rare earth, rare minerals deal. I mean, that's, one, I mean, that's strike one, strike two, strike three for India.
Look, they are in the position of supplicant. They need the United States a lot more right now. In some ways, it's kind of like Ukraine and Zelensky, where he said, yeah, we'll give you a critical minerals deal after he got whacked by Trump. Yeah, we'll accept a ceasefire with no preconditions. And Putin's saying, I'll have a meeting with you, I'll talk to you, but no, I'm not giving you a ceasefire. Well, for Modi, the red line is no, when you're engaging with Pakistan, my mortal enemy that way, for whatever reasons, and accepting a 2-hour meeting with the head of Army Staff Munir in the White House, no, I'm not going to treat you in the same way. And yes, I think it's hard to imagine that the commercial deals that are being struck by the White House that have nothing to do with U.S. national interest are playing zero role in America's tilt away from India and towards Pakistan.
We don't know what percentage that is. Jake Sullivan says that he thinks it's part of it. I will say, though, that there is an obsession, and I know John hears this just as well, there is an obsession on the Nobel Prize.
Oh, yeah.
And I will say, I think India may be underplayed the role Donald Trump played in that, in getting in the middle of India and Pakistan, two nuclear powers. And so you had Modi saying, no, he had nothing to do with it. And you had Pakistan saying, you should have the Nobel Prize. And the feeling that sort of like when the Saudis projected Donald Trump's image up, on his first foreign trip in the first term, that's a leader that, and a government that knows how to play Trump.
The president's been fishing about for that Nobel Prize, talking about the 7, 8 wars that
he spoke about it yesterday, saying he deserves one.
Talked about it yesterday, I deserve one. He's talking about all the wars he's solved. I think we should reserve the Nobel, perhaps, Ian, for the time when India and Pakistan have a lasting peace. But
let's listen into Bloomberg. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor is going to get rid of that brain fog. It'll allow you to concentrate on tasks at work or in school or even at home. You can take this at almost any age, if you're an adult, and drink it with filtered water. What this will do is get rid of that brain fog, help support memory, and over time, what you're going to notice is you're going to be thinking faster. In addition, you're going to be creating new dendritic connections. And when you have positive neuroplasticity, your cognition is quicker. Your memory is better. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Clarity Factor. Make sure you drink it with filtered water.
I followed professional sports, the economics of professional sports for a long time. It's all about broadcasting rights fees. That is the economic driver here. The women, one could argue, given the popularity, should be paid multiples of what they're being paid today. That's going to be driven by, I think, if history is a lesson, broadcasting rights fees or just media rights fees.
Sure.
I'm not sure how you
you have it right.
So where are we on that?
Well, the WNBA just agreed to a new media rights deal. It was a $2.2 billion deal annually. $200 million annually, $2.2 billion total. And with that in mind, of course, the players are sitting there looking at that number and they're like, yeah, if you're going to be, expanding on the revenue for the league, then we want to be a part of that. There is a disagreement at the negotiating table with collective bargaining right now as to both sides coming to terms as to what the growth in salary should look like. But hopefully they come to terms soon, because otherwise, we could be starting the season a little bit later.
Let's play about this this DoD strike on these drug traffickers in the international waters.
Fox News reporting that President Donald Trump shared this dramatic video of a U.S. military strike that blew apart a Venezuelan drug boat in the Southern Caribbean. It left nearly a dozen suspected Tren de Aragua narco-terrorists dead. The president later shared a video of the strike on Truth Social, confirming the blast occurred in the Southcom area of responsibility, while Fox News reports the terrorists were in international waters transporting illegal narcotics to the U.S. A lot of questions surrounding this video and what the Trump administration did. So we want to play out the very latest from this Wednesday morning as Pete Hegseth joined alongside Fox and Friends with an exclusive interview. Take a listen.
Morning. So the president
Great to see you all.
good to see you too. Thanks for your service. The president put that video of him eviscerating, blowing up that boat coming across with all of the drugs on board. And the president said on social, on Truth Social, let them be on notice to anybody bringing drugs to the U.S. Beware. So the president is sending a message to other cartels, right?
A very clear one. I can tell you that was definitely not artificial intelligence. I watched it live. We knew exactly who was in that boat. We knew exactly what they were doing, and we knew exactly who they represented. And that was Tren de Aragua, a narco-terrorist organization designated by the United States, trying to poison our country with illicit drugs. Last year, under the Biden administration, all 4 years, 100,000 Americans died from drug-related from drugs, from the use of drugs, many of which poured in from Central and South America through our southwest border. Now, we're sealing the border, but President Trump is willing to go on offense in ways that others have not been. And to send that clear signal to Tren de Aragua, Cartel del Sols, and others emanating from Venezuela, we're not going to allow this kind of activity. You're poisoning our people. We've got incredible assets, and they are gathering in the region. And so you want to try to traffic drugs? It's a new day. It's a different day. And so those 11 drug traffickers are no longer with us, sending a very clear signal that this is an activity the United States is not going to tolerate in our hemisphere.
Well, Mr. Secretary, you made it very clear when we had the opportunity to visit the southern border at Fort Bliss, the Southern Command knew exactly where these folks were and that you guys were going to take them out. I guess the question is, for this operation specifically, was this a drone attack or was this hellfire from a helo?
I can't disclose precisely how this went down. I can tell you it was precision. It was very well understood exactly what assets would be used in order to achieve the effect. So that's classified how it was done, but you can see publicly a lot of the assets that we have in the region, which to include, in our view, which holds 2,200 combat infantry Marines and has plenty of its own organic assets. So we've got assets in the air, assets in the water, assets on ships, because this is a deadly serious mission for us. And it won't stop with just this strike. Anyone else trafficking in those waters who we know is a designated narco-terrorist will face the same fate. And it's important for the American people to protect our homeland and protect our hemisphere.
So their leader, Maduro, who we put a $50 million bounty on his head, has called out to China for help in this. And China's condemning the U.S. And saying, I shouldn't use the word condemn. They're warning us we should look out for the different countries' integrity. Are you worried about China and their relationship with Venezuela? And how will that affect our policy?
No, the only person that should be worried is Nicolas Maduro, who's running effectively as a kingpin of a narco state.
I sense a coup. I sense someone's going to get assassinated in South America. Brought to you by the national security state.
Elected and indicted for $50 million by the United States. And we know he's involved in the types of drug running that has affected the American people directly. So China and other countries are going to say certain things, and that's their prerogative. What we have there in the Caribbean is a clear demonstration of military might. President Trump has shown, whether it's the southwest border, whether it's the Houthis in freedom of navigation, whether it's Midnight Hammer in Iran, that the precise application of American power can have incredible impacts and reshape dynamics around the world and in the region. So Nicolas Maduro, as he considers whether or not he wants to continue to be a narco trafficker, has some decisions to make, and that's all I'll say about that.
Is regime change our goal there?
Well, that's a presidential decision, and we certainly understand the indictment. We understand that $50 million. Anyone would prefer that he would just give himself up, but that's a presidential level decision, and we're prepared with every asset that the American military has.
It's incredible that y'all were able to track that boat, know that there were 11 narco-terrorists on board, and be able to take it out to prevent all those drugs from making it into the United States and killing so many teenagers, so many 20-year-olds, whoever's doing drugs in the U.S. So thank you for that. I don't know how you did it. I'm sure you have intel that you can't talk about. But let's talk about China this morning, because while we've worried.
All right, so that was the very latest this Wednesday morning, about an hour ago, where Secretary Pete Hegseth joined Fox and Friends to discuss.
Okay, let's see here. What else is going on in the news? Senator Rand Paul.
Following the president's announcement that the U.S. would take a 10% stake in Intel, Kentucky Republican Senator Rand Paul called the move a step towards socialism. Senator Paul joins us this morning to talk industrial policy and more. We've had this ongoing conversation all this morning, Senator, about, we've said the good versus the perfect, and we said, there are things that the true conservatives like about the president's policies, things that they don't like. If I had to sum it up, you're not a big fan of tariffs or what you would call industrial policy.
Well, it's not that people in government, bureaucrats, are necessarily stupid or incompetent, but it's a debatable question. But they don't get the same signals. So the reason why you don't want your government to own anything, if possible, or to only get involved with those things that the private market can't, is that the private market sends a constant barrage of signals. And people have to respond to those every day. It's sort of a cruel world the economy is, but that's how we get efficiency, and that's how we get cheap prices for people on different products, is because people, of course, they don't do it out of benevolence. They do it out of this fierce competition in the marketplace. Once you involve government in it, you take those forces away that breed excellence. And so I think it's a big mistake to have government ownership of things. And of course, it's a step towards socialism. What is worrisome is when you see the people supporting the president just sort of saying, oh, no, this is good, and it is good that the government should. And that really worries me, because I worry that the free market movement, the movement that was a big part of the Republican Party, is being diminished over time.
I know exactly what you're saying, and just to tell you how I sort of tried to grapple with it, the money was already going to Intel from the CHIPS Act. And free market forces did cause some hollowing out of a lot of our industries, and there are some that we do. It would be in our best interest if we could bring some of them back. So the CHIPS Act was one way of doing it, but it was just subsidies with all these conditions. Once we already earmarked all that money for Intel, isn't it better if the government actually had a stake, and not a stake where they'd be active owners, but just passive owners? The taxpayers or the government owns the state, but instead of just giving it to them, as long as they have child care and DEI, actually have a stake. If we ended it right here, and it wasn't a slippery slope to only 10% of every company, is there any way that's okay?
We've been giving poor people Coca-Cola for a long time, and maybe 10% of the money Coca-Cola gets is given to them. Maybe poor people should own part of Coca-Cola. It's a terrible idea. It's sort of compounding one bad idea with another. Okay, we gave them the subsidies. Well, let's rescind that. Let's stop that. Let's repeal the CHIPS Act. President Trump, as a candidate, wanted to repeal the CHIPS Act. He was an opponent of it. Most of the conservative Republicans were opponent of it. So, it's always a mistake to say, well, we have this one bad policy. All right, we'll tolerate a little socialism, but we don't want any more. 10% is not too bad, but 15%, you get to 15%, then I'm going back to being for the free market again. Now, I think it's a bad idea.
I wanted you to come on in July, and I told you this was after you once again renewed a criminal referral for Anthony Fauci. This is something I've been talking about, because I saw the smoking gun of him trying to get his colleagues to all say there's no way this was a lab-generated virus. And there's a very good reason for him to have done that after he knew full well that the United States had funded some gain-of-function research. And it was walking and quacking and it had web feet and everybody knew. And that was, I think that deserves a, who cares what I think. But what are the chances that he's held to account someday at this point?
Never. He'll never be.
Yeah, the big question is the auto pen, whether auto pen pardons are constitutional or legal or lawful. We do know that when President Obama first signed a law about auto pen, when he came back from his trip to India, he quickly
that's not the issue. With Fauci, it was crimes against humanity. So even if there was a pardon by the president, which I don't think is legitimate because of the auto pen, but let's just say it was legitimate. Because it's crimes against humanity, there is a higher court that would supersede to go after crimes against humanity. What Fauci did killed millions of people worldwide, 6.5 million and counting. Now, if you add in injury of the inoculations, then you have tens of millions, maybe 100 million. But it's a big number. Fauci killed a lot of people. And he needs to be held accountable. But not just Fauci. Also the people that did the gain of function, like Barrick. What about going on a war footing and destroying the Wuhan lab? What about all of those war planners developing systems that are biological as warfare? Hold them accountable too. It's not just Fauci. But no one is going to be held accountable because they're just going to talk about a auto pen issue, which really doesn't mean anything. And this is what I have a problem with Rand Paul. This is the problem that I have with Rand Paul. This is just a straw man right here. There's just nothing there. There's nothing there. They'll talk a lot. They'll just, say, we're going to go after you. Nothing happens. He knows damn well what happened with the national security state and the biological weapons development. I freaking hate it.
Legitimate. So I think there is some question there. I can tell you that we are pouring through millions of bits of data on Anthony Fauci. There will be a subpoena in short fashion, and there also will be news in the next week or two about things that we have found reported under the records. There's going to be significant revelation about Anthony Fauci in the next week.
Okay.
I would be shocked if it's something that they say that I already said 5 years ago. I'd be so shocked. There's nothing new out there. It's all been published. It's all been talked about. I've talked about it ad nauseum. There's nothing new. It's all bullshit. What's going to happen? He's not going to be held accountable. The guy should be hanging from a tree in front of the White House. He should be hung from a tree. A public hanging. That's what should happen to Fauci. Only after he has his due process in court. Either international court or domestic court, I don't care. But the point is, he harmed a lot of people, and he needs to be held accountable.
Of RFK Jr. and some of the new rules and some of the new developments we see with vaccines. That's what I think one of the downfalls of vilifying Anthony Fauci too much is that it plays into some of the people that are total anti-vaxxers. Which I don't know if that's
absolutely true. It's absolutely true. the event has polarized the situation even more. You have the spectrum where it's all inoculations are bad, and you have another side of the spectrum that all inoculations are good. But the reality of the situation is somewhere in the middle. And the focus of pro-inoculation or anti-inoculation misses the big point. They made biological weapons. That's the point. But everyone's so focused on pro-vax or anti-vax. Stupid argument. They divided you so you cannot focus on what was important. And they are continuing developing biological weapons. Do you know that the scientific community can take a respiratory virus and put proteins that are from Ebola into the respiratory virus? Do you know that you can actually take the proteins that are in HIV and put them in the genome of a respiratory virus? Do you know what that means? That means you have created what is normally blood transmission pathogen to a respiratory transmission. And the ability to enhance it through AI and Stargate will make it even faster to develop. But everyone was so focused on inoculation, pro-inoculation, anti-inoculation, but that wasn't the real argument. The real argument is AI development enhancing directed evolution.
In the middle, isn't there in the way we conduct policy?
Well, I'm not anti-vaccine, but what I would say is the same way there's a Trump derangement syndrome, there's a Kennedy derangement syndrome. Mm-hmm. There are some very specific issues we should discuss, and where I think the facts are on Kennedy's side. Should we mandate vaccines for
the reality of the situation is the scheduling is wrong. The scheduling is wrong. The testing, the clinical testing is wrong. It's done without fully appreciating long-term effects and synergistic effects with other inoculations. So these pro-inoculators, they just, they love big pharma. And there's in the scientific community and the medical community, they have horse blinders on and they believe in a dogma. And they're not willing to look in the mirror and say, maybe they're wrong. But the other side, the very strong anti-inoculators, they're not willing to look in the mirror and say, you know what, some things need to have inoculation. So the situation has polarized people. And you're not looking at the details of what is bad, what is not bad. What should be the scheduling for pediatrics, what should not be the scheduling for pediatrics. I personally think we should go back to a Gen X scheduling for pediatrics. Because most Gen Xers did not have autism. Most Gen Xers did not have obesity issues. Most Gen Xers did not have ADHD. And then you have the scientific community saying, well, we understand and the screening is so much better now, so we just didn't catch it in the Gen Xers. Really? Then why, literally, when you look at a random school, private or public, but you random 100 different schools around the country, why is it that 40% of the students are on the spectrum? And not by a little bit, by a lot. So they have autism, they have ADHD, and they look retarded. Why? That's not what happened when I was a kid around the country. That was a rare situation. So something's definitely happening. And it's a combination of things. It's the endocrine disruption that's taking place because of our environment and the foods that we eat, but also the inoculation scheduling in pediatric care. Just so sick of it. It's so obvious. All right, let's go to job openings and labor turnover data that was released, and we talked about it a little bit from Bloomberg, but this is the perspective from CNBC with Rick Santelli.
Some stuff just costs more, except airfare. Find cheaper flights this summer on Kayak. Download now.
If you're earning 7 figures and still using a basic box-checking CPA, you're leaving over $100,000 a year on the table, and you probably...
Santelli, hey, Rick.
Hi, Carl and D. You are watching yields move lower on the curve, and that is primarily because job openings and labor turnover, known as JOLTS, comes in on the light side, expecting a number close to 7.4 million. This is July read. Comes in 7,181,000. That would be the smallest job openings number going all the way back to D's of 2020. Now, if you look at factory orders for July, comes in exactly as expected at minus 1.3, which is actually the strongest number since it was positive in May at over 8%. There is a revision in the rearview mirror. No revisions yet. Factory orders ex trans up 0.6, also exactly as expected. Now, when we get to durable goods, these are final reads. We had mid-month reads. So minus 0.6, positive 0.6, excuse me, remains positive 0.6. That was in the factory orders. Durable goods, minus 2.8, stays at minus 2.8. And what's interesting about minus 2.8 is that is a very weak number. What we've noticed is there's a big tug of war that was going on in durables. You had minus 2.8 on our final July read. If you look at June, it was minus 9.4. That was the worst going all the way back to April of 2020. Then prior to that, you had a whopping 16.5. That was the best since 2014. So the tug of war going on with tariffs and all the issues is finally starting to settle back just a bit. Now, if you look at ex-transportation, we lost the 10 from 1.1 mid-month to 1%. And if we look at capital good orders, non-defense ex-air proxy for capital spending, it remains at 1.1%. And that's a pretty good number. That would be the best number going back to May when it was up almost 2%. And finally, if we switch from orders to shipments, 0.7, so about 3/4 1%, and that's exactly where it was on the mid-month read. As I pointed out, we are now hovering around 422 in a 10-year. That would be down 4 basis points. 361 in a 2-year. That's down 3 basis points. And I know that everybody, of course, is talking about the long bond, whether it's in this country, in the UK, in Japan, because the yields are moving up. Many want to blame it on what's going on with the Fed and Lisa Cook. Listen, I've been looking at these markets a long time. It's an arbitrage with many of these other overseas 30 years, but 30 years is the benchmark. Look at 10 years. 10 years have been in a squashed range. Don't see any movement in there based on this notion of Fed independence loss. It's actually been quite a consolidated range on a closing basis between 420 and 433. Sarah, back to you.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
He makes a good point. The Treasury market, especially the 10-year, is stable. If they were so worried about Fed independence, yields would skyrocket. So if it's at around 4.2, I mean, just looking at this chart right here, this is the price of the 10-year, and the price is going up. Yields are going down today. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Myotrol is perfect to help build muscle and maintain muscle, help with mitochondrial health. It has flavonoids, polyphenols, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle. You should be taking this if you're 40 years of age or older, male or female. You'll also benefit from Myotrol if you're an athlete. Younger or older, you'll notice that you'll have better gains with musculature and recovering from your workout. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Also, get the Goodnight formula. This is tryptophan, melatonin, GABA, and passion flower. This will help you to get into 3 to 5 cycles of REM sleep and deep sleep so you consolidate memory, detoxify your central nervous system, and to be well rested. With a good sleep regularly, you are slowing down the aging process, bringing down cortisol levels, and you are improving your brain function. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the Goodnight formula, take it every night, and every day with doing some resistance training, take the Myotrol to help build muscle. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
TJ Maxx, Marshalls, these are the companies that people really look to for deals. They have an interesting buying model where they're buying like the extra inventory that other retailers didn't sell. So they're a little bit isolated from the tariffs, and they also are benefiting from the fact that a lot of retailers bought a lot of stuff ahead of tariffs. I'm also really interested in the dollar stores. Dollar stores, have a huge footprint. They're in these rural parts of the country that traditionally the big retailers don't reach. That has given them a big advantage. Now Amazon and Walmart are coming for those dollars from e-commerce in a really big way. So I'm really interested in how these value retailers.
Do any of those companies have a large online presence?
No, well, they are doing things like partnering with Uber Eats and delivery services like that. But I think the main draw is like if you're living in a rural part of the country, like the place that you go to buy a gallon of milk at the end of the day is your Dollar General. Like that's the store that you have. But increasingly, Walmart and Amazon are looking to these rural areas as their last frontier.
All right, Emily, great stuff. Emily Cohn, consumer team leader for Bloomberg News. Appreciate getting that update on Macy's and some of the dollar stores here as these retailers continue to report. All right, for our listeners in the U.S., reminder, you can listen to us via satellite radio on Sirius XM Channel 121. Access the world's only global audio business network, coast to coast, 24 hours a day. Bloomberg Radio on Sirius XM Channel 121 is presented by Oracle. Stay tuned for the latest market news and industry research. The next hour of Bloomberg Intelligence Radio starts right now.
This is Bloomberg Intelligence with Scarlett Fu and Paul Sweeney.
How do you think the Fed is looking at tariffs, the uncertainty of tariffs?
Let's take a look at the sectors and how they performed.
A lot of investors getting whipsawed every day by news events.
Breaking market headlines and corporate news.
Let's play France 24.
Could we see a market disruption, a market event?
If your cat goes from weird to weirder, drooly to drooly.
Before we do that, before we go to France 24 about the military showing during the parade, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the olive leaf extract. Olive leaf extract will help to bring down inflammation and help with your lipid profile. Now, that will help with your vascular system because by bringing down inflammation and having lower LDL and higher HDL, you're reducing plaque formation. Now, with bringing down inflammation systemically, you're helping to boost up your immune system. So it's a dual purpose supplement. So boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular health by taking the olive leaf extract.
Russian President Vladimir Putin met with North Korea's Kim Jong-un for talks in Beijing today. At the start of that meeting, Putin praised what he called the bravery and heroism of North Korean soldiers who fought alongside Russian troops in Ukraine. Putin saying the Korean soldiers helped repel a Ukrainian incursion into Russia's border region of Kursk.
I want to point out that your soldiers fought courageously and heroically. I would like to note that we will never forget the sacrifices that your armed forces and the families of your servicemen have suffered. On behalf of the Russian people, I would like to thank you for your participation in the joint fight against neo-Nazism. I ask you to convey my warmest words of gratitude to all the people of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
The people of the brotherly Russian Federation, and I would like to once again express my gratitude to President Putin for taking this opportunity to highly evaluate what we demonstrated through that struggle. I believe that going forward we must strengthen our cooperation across various fields so that our two peoples can achieve tangible outcomes that contribute to the improvement of their well-being.
The Russian and North Korean leaders were the VIP guests of Chinese President Xi Jinping. They were there to attend China's biggest ever military parade, marking the 80th anniversary of Japan's defeat in World War II. Now, this was the first such gathering of the three countries' leaders since the early days of the Cold War some 60 years ago. Speaking at the parade, Xi warned the world was facing a choice between peace or war.
History cautions us that humanity rises and falls together. Only when all countries and nations treat each other as equals, coexist in peace and support each other, can we uphold common security, eradicate the root cause of war, and prevent the recurrence of historical tragedies. Today, humanity again has to choose between peace and war, dialogue and confrontation.
For more analysis now, let's bring in China expert Dylan Lo Ming-Pu, who joins me from Beijing. Dylan, thanks for taking the time to speak to us. Xi Jinping here hoping to use this parade, this event today to highlight his strength at home and his growing influence on the world stage. Would you say he succeeded?
I would say that his message landed quite successfully, particularly with members of the Global South. I think if you look at the leaders in attendance, and the pulling power that Beijing is able to demonstrate with the number of leaders that are in attendance, that is testament to China's growing diplomatic clout, but increasingly its leadership role within the Global South community as well. So I would say, yes, at this very moment, he has achieved many of his key diplomatic objectives.
And what messages are Western observers who might be watching this spectacle from far away like we are, particularly the U.S. President Donald Trump, what are they likely to take away?
I think they will take a more nuanced assessment. This parade alone would not portend any significant shift towards China's orbit, particularly the leaders in attendance as well, because we would do well to remember that Modi in attendance for the Shanghai Cooperation Organization did not attend the military parade. I think what they will be quite concerned with is this growing cooperation. I mean, the symbolism of Xi Jinping being flanked by Kim Jong-un and Putin, the symbolism and the message behind that show of peers, that show of strength, and the very nice words they had for each other cannot be missed. But at the same time, I think they will also take a step back and see and question whether or not this is a temporal issue, or does it portend a more structural change in the sense that there is a very strong, growing coordination that is geared in opposition to America or geared in opposition to the West. I think we need to see a bit more data before we can come to a more solid conclusion on that front.
So Dylan, as you mentioned, the parade came after the Tianjin summit, where there was, for example, also India's Narendra Modi, who was not at the parade today, but at the summit there wasn't Kim Jong-un. I mean, what can we read into who was or wasn't at first the summit and then the parade?
Several things. I mean, it makes perfect strategic and tactical sense to have the events back to back, because for those in attendance for the SCO, it would be, from a point of logistics and practicality, makes more sense, and it's far easier to make the decision to attend. It will not also be missed in international community and watchers that Japan tried to put out a message asking particular partners in Europe and Asia not to attend. Not sure how well that message landed. That was also the overtones or undertones of both the SEO and the military parade of an emerging alternative order, one that is Chinese inflected, I think that message came across quite strongly. You can draw a common thread from the messages in SCO and in the military parade that we just saw.
Dylan, we know obviously what Xi Jinping is trying to communicate, but what about inside China itself? Do we know any more about what people inside China think about this parade, this new strategy that Xi Jinping is trying to put forth?
Let me caveat that I'm based in Singapore as well, so I can give an outsider's perspective on what I think the people of China think. One is, I think this is indeed a moment of pride, of national pride for the Chinese. The fact that you make and craft the historical narrative where once China was bullied and indeed had its territory violated by an aggressor, there's almost very little chance or zero chance of that happening right now. That continuity, and of course this continuity and this success rests on the power of the CCP and the continued rule of the CCP. I think the message domestically is, look, we've got this. We are the only ones capable of shepherding China out of its troubles and displaying the might and power and prowess that you see on show today. What is more, we got all of these foreign leaders come to Beijing to attend and to celebrate this very important moment for us. So this is a great rallying point for Chinese people, and of course to help consolidate further, to boost morale around Xi himself and to the party.
Now, some analysts, historians might say that the parade today was also a chance for Xi to rewrite what he would call the Western dominant narrative of World War II. Of course, China sees the victory through a very different prism than many in the West. I mean, talk us through what that Chinese narrative is and what Xi wants the world to believe.
I would.
Is it really a Chinese narrative or just a communist narrative?
Say that in reality the differences are sometimes a matter of emphasis rather than completely diametrically opposed narratives. I would say that the Chinese narrative is quite clear. They want to position their role as the victors of World War II. They want to highlight the amount of blood, tears, sweat, treasure that they have poured into creating the just and peaceful order and in bringing World War II to a close. And of course, the narratives that they have crafted in projecting and emphasizing China's role and other actors as the aggressor is useful for the present moment as well, because China very easily and with good amount of reasons say that we are not the ones that are aggressive. We were never the ones that have initiated conflict. If anything, we were the ones defending, protecting the international order, protecting peace, and that is the same today. So while at the same time you have this big show of latest military toys, cutting-edge weapons that are obviously offensive in nature, military offensive, but the words, if you hear what he says, one of peace, that we will use it for peace. So there's a dual message here. We have the means if push comes to shove, but at the same time, we will stick to our role as has historically been the case. The Chinese would say the role of making peace, securing peace, and protecting peace.
All right, Dylan, thank you for that. That's China analyst Dylan Lo Ming Hui speaking to me there from Beijing.
Pace University gets people where they want.
With our Federal Reserve and various members of the Fed.
Well, we did have, besides Raphael Bostic, we had Alberto Musalem from the St. Louis Fed, who's been one of the more hawkish on the Fed, saying that he thinks that the inflation and jobs mandates have moved into better balance. He isn't ready to say which one is going to be dominant, so he isn't saying we should cut rates, but he did sound maybe a little bit more willing to consider that if we see maybe a bad report on Friday and a high inflation report on next week on the 11th, he might change his mind and go the other way, no cuts. So he's out there, and then Chris Waller was on CNBC today saying essentially what he has been saying, that we should cut rates now, and the economy is slowing, we should get closer to neutral, so we should have a series of rate cuts. That's the policy side. The legal side is that we are still waiting for a decision on what happens with Lisa Cook. The judge extended the deadline for the two sides to file briefs with her until tomorrow. The Cook side already has in it, they said she never committed mortgage fraud, but they don't offer any evidence one way or another. I guess they're trying to leave that aside as an issue. And they made some arguments about how the Congress always intended for the Fed to be independent, and that they always intended that for cause be for incompetence or not showing up for the job or malfeasance, some sort of criminal thing, as opposed to the president being able to fire them at will. And they cited David Wilcox, Bloomberg's chief U.S. economist for Bloomberg Intelligence, in a paper that he wrote. So that was very interesting. We are waiting for the response from the government, and one assumes that Judge Cobb will rule fairly quickly because we've got this September 17th meeting. And whatever she says isn't going to matter because it's going straight to the appeals court. Yeah. So they're going to want to have time to get all this through to see if she shows up to vote.
Mike McKee, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Michael McKee, International Economics and Policy Correspondent for Bloomberg News, during his live here.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The first pillar of my core protocol is taking Cleanse or Max 35. Take a teaspoon a day, swish in your mouth, gargle 20 seconds, swallow. What that's going to do is improve your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, help with the epithelial lining, maintain the mucosal barrier, and help boost up your immune system. Take it every day. If you're not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day. Something that you probably will need in the fall and the winter. Also, I have very high quality toothpaste made from structural nanosilver. There's no fluoride. Get a few tubes of this toothpaste for your household. Very high quality. It'll help to whiten your teeth, freshen your breath, reduce inflammation at the gum line, and help your gum line health. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get these very high quality toothpaste.
Things because I don't think that it is. In terms of no chrome divestiture, I think it's very consistent. And Paul, you know, I've been on this show before and I've been saying for 2 years that there would not be a chrome divestiture ordered here. But where it's inconsistent is with this default position, because having a monopoly is not illegal, but it's the conduct that maintains the monopoly that's exclusionary that is illegal. And what the judge found in that liability decision, that the conduct that was illegal were the default agreements. Right? This was exclusionary. This kept other search engines from being able to grow and scale and get better. He's allowing those default positions to stay in place now. It's a shorter term. It's only for 1 year. Theoretically, in 1 year or 1 year after that, other search engines that have improved can compete for that contract. But it's still odd to me that what is found to be illegal is allowed to continue.
Well, the stock market likes it. This is a company that's got $2.8 trillion in market cap. It's up 9% today. You just don't see that very often here. So what does this mean for just Silicon Valley in general? Can I sit back if I'm a CEO of Silicon Valley and say, or sort of maybe a little bit more aligned with our industry, how we think about the world, and then maybe the government?
I would say that the way Silicon Valley can think about it is that this judge was cautious, and this judge did talk about needing to apply caution when you're dealing with tech markets and Silicon Valley companies, because judges don't understand it. They don't want to impact the route, the innovation, and the natural course of the industry, right? They don't want to distort that. And so it does suggest that it's more likely a judge is going to be cautious in future remedies for other cases. But what I think everybody has to keep in mind, because I've seen people talking about the fact that there's
really a classic example, and this is the classic example. As society becomes more complex, as society becomes more knowledge-based, where you have and a domain has many layers of understanding, we can't take this assumption that lawyers and judges are smart. They're not. They're not. They can't. They're not smart enough to understand the growing technologies that are emerging in this world. So the real intelligent individuals are the engineers. They always have been. Engineers, in terms of any discipline in college, engineers have the highest IQ. It's not lawyers. It's not even pre-med or doctors. It's engineers. And so the problem is that we have a litigious society. We're pumping out too many lawyers that can't really practice. So what do? They start working for, they have a podcast, or they start working for a news network, and they're a talking head. They don't even practice. And they're going to tell you how things really are. And this is the reason why when we had the crisis in 2020, all those talking heads that were lawyers, they didn't know what the hell was going on. They didn't get it. They still don't get it.
Cases, I don't really think that there is, because the facts are entirely different case by case. The markets are entirely different, and what made a divestiture remedy inappropriate here doesn't necessarily exist as a fact pattern. Let's say an FTC v. Meta, or US DOJ v. Apple, or the other DOJ case against Google in the ad tech space. Those are different cases with different facts, and I don't think that there's necessarily a read-through that companies are safe from divestiture orders because of this one.
Do we think that AI, the quickness and how it's developing, played any kind of role in the judge's decision here?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. The judge even observed that in the liability hearing, which was now a year and a half or so ago, that AI barely came up at all. Other than by Google, it barely came up. But in the remedies hearing, it was all about AI, and the witnesses were all AI. And he says it just shows in a year and a half, how much things have changed, and the fact that you now have real competition to general search other than other general search engines, and I think that impacted them a lot.
Yeah, I think so. That's probably pretty reasonable. Jen Reed, thanks so much for joining us. Jen Reed, she's a senior litigation analyst, does all the antitrust stuff for us at Bloomberg Intelligence. Coming up, we're going to check in with James Abate, Managing Director and Head of Fundamental Strategies at Horizon Investment. Get his thoughts on these markets. And then Jen Bartashis, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior Analyst, she covers all the retail stuff for us. We'll get her thoughts on the Dollar Tree earnings, what it means for the consumer here as we get past this back to school time and get ready for holiday shopping, which is obviously.
Can you do your holiday shopping at a dollar store? I think that could be a challenge we take on.
Do that, maybe. Why not? You need that for the stocking stuff.
That's true.
S&P 500 up 30 points. One more coming up. This is.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAD+. NAD+ is a supplement that will boost up NAD+ levels, that will increase your energy. NAD+ will also repair DNA damage and mitochondrial DNA. And NAD+ will protect your neurons. Super important if you're 40 years of age, old or older. Protect your neurons. Super important. Ubiquinol is the most bioavailable form of CoQ10 that you can purchase. There is no supplement better than what I have in my hand in terms of CoQ10. If most people are taking CoQ10, you're probably not taking the right kind. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get this Ubiquinol. It is the best on the market. Now, Ubiquinol will help to soak up free radicals. It's going to neutralize free radicals, bring down stress in the cell, help with the mitochondrial health, and your energy levels are going to increase. And CoQ10 is super important in protecting neurons. Stack this, and you have a neuroprotecting stack. You can also stack this with Clarity Factor and C60. That's a great stack too. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the Ubiquinol and the NAD+ supplements. Take them every day. Make sure you drink it with filtered water. And also apply a holistic approach. Proper diet, proper exercise, filter your water, stay away from processed foods. Do the 4 modalities of exercise: balancing, stretching, a little bit of cardio, and resistance training. Learn new things. All these are positive lifestyle changes that will improve your health and slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the NAD+ and the Ubiquinol. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. All righty, let's see. Let's listen into the momentum is changing, says Macy's CEO.
Lysol knows little hands deserve big protection. Kill 99.9% of germs.
Tell me this. Why settle for the best EV? You can build the best damn car. Compromise nothing.
The company's CEO telling Bloomberg Romain Bostic that they have content for both for both big spenders and savers. I'm pleased to say that fresh off of speaking with the company's CEO, Romain joins me now around the desk. Romain, really great interview you had with the Macy's CEO here for Bloomberg News. How does this mean their turnaround is? Is it on track? Is it complete with this type of earnings?
Well, it's certainly not complete, but I think by the sheer reaction, I think investors are growing a little bit more confident. Remember, Tony Spring just took over as CEO back in February of 2024, so it hasn't even been a full 2 years. There are a lot of doubts about his ability to turn around what is essentially a big legacy business, particularly with the Macy's brand itself. Remember, Bloomingdale's is also under this. They've been doing well for a while. Tony actually used to help run that company, that side of the company. Blue Mercury, another component of this business, also doing well. But we know Macy's as a Macy's, and that's been struggling. And what he's done is shut down a lot of stores. He's taken about 125 other Macy's stores, completely revamped them, tried to make the shopping experience better, make them more aesthetic, create more experiential things in them. And at least for right now, it does appear to be paying off. You're seeing that in comp sales growth. It was a big surprise this quarter. Most people were expecting a flat quarter, even a down quarter. It came in at about 1.9%. If you just X out all of the businesses that they're closing, that's good. Now, this is still a company that's in decline. It's just that decline is now slowing.
Well, trying to do a turnaround in best of times is hard, and it's certainly not the best of times. You have retailers like Macy's having to contend with changing consumer appetite and especially tariffs. What is their strategy going forward to try to make sure that they can maintain margin with some of the higher prices maybe weighing on them?
Well, they did provide some insights, the idea that they're getting about a 40 to 60 basis point hit on margin, specifically from the tariffs. While he did say that they did raise prices in some areas, he did say they're still holding price in others, though he did indicate that that could change. I think one interesting thing that he talked about was the ability for Macy's to negotiate with the suppliers. Remember, this is a behemoth of a retailer, so they do have some flexibility. They also have private label brands. These are things they make themselves. The tariff costs are much more impactful there. They said they're doing their best there to also reduce that cost. And you saw that in the most recent quarter. Expenses were lower, inventory was lower, and you saw a better product mix that actually helped to boost sales in particular categories like women's apparel, which they have been lacking.
What does all of this say then just generally about the consumer at this moment and their willingness to spend and maybe eat some of the price increases?
Well, he talked a lot in my interview about the consumer being more surgical, more choiceful. This also came up on the conference call, the idea that people are sort of making choices about what to spend. But in the quote that you used, that was a key quote that he used when I spoke to him in the interview, this idea that they offer something for everybody. They offer something for the higher end consumer and something for the lower end consumer. And he thinks that that could be the strength of Macy's. And maybe that's where they are. Because remember, this has been a story about identity. I mean, what is Macy's? What is a department store, particularly in this environment? He seems to think he's found a way, and at least for today, with that 20% pop in the shares, investors seem to be somewhat pleased.
Let's listen in here. Stocks, bonds rise as weak jobs bolster Fed bets.
I knew you were going to ask me about baseball, and I've been so busy with the U.S. Open that I haven't had time to study what's going on. But Tom, there's still a lot of opportunities across markets right now. What we're watching is that essentially the U.S. has to earn every bit of the returns. Earnings season's been awesome. The economic surprise index is perking up. U.S. equities are doing fine, but meanwhile we have European stocks on fire. China is the technical titan of the world so far, year to date, up 51%. Guess what their earnings growth has been this year? 0.0%. So we're seeing multiple expansion across non-US markets. We're seeing sentiment drive them. US is holding in there, but we still think that the earnings engine in the United States is the strongest, and there continue to be better relative opportunities.
That's the thing I'm gonna let me know and love, because the foundation here, folks, and this is the Johnny Hancock. Are you an old or new Johnny Hancock? That's like there's 2 skyscrapers in Boston. Which one are you in?
I never worked in that original building, but I have been with the firm for 21 years.
Unbelievable. Emily, as simple as I can, retirement money, the quiet money, they have to participate, and you're still saying quality large cap is the place to be?
Yep, quality large cap, momentum by far has been the best performing factor. For those that aren't familiar with it, it's just buying what's been up over the last 6 to 12 months. We're not only seeing that in Europe, but also in the United States. Meanwhile, quality's been a bit left for dead here. These are companies with great balance sheets, lots of cash, a limited need to take on debt in order to grow. We still think that's where the opportunities are. The United States has been an abundance of quality companies. But the other area, Tom, that's been left for dead is bonds. High quality bonds are up year to date. They're actually working as diversifiers in portfolios. And we think that there's more room to run here on a total return basis. The bond market is not sniffing out the disinflation that we think is coming here because of the myopic focus on political developments. We think there's a missed opportunity there for investors who are sitting in cash and could move out the curve and embrace high-quality bonds.
Do you know how much it's like chewing glass for the Gloom Crew to listen to Emily Rowland?
Exactly.
I mean, she's like Ben Weaver. They've been so right. It's sick.
Now, one thing that has not bounced back, or one asset class that, or one secure asset that has not bounced back is the U.S. dollar. What do you make of the U.S. dollar?
It is just remarkable to see the dollar down almost 10% year to date, even more versus the euro. A lot of this, again, is based on sentiment and political developments. When the Fed independence comes into question, where do we see it? In the dollar. There's a fear of investors owning U.S. dollar-based assets, given the political dynamics. We think that's overdone. And in fact, U.S. economic growth, I'm not saying it's great, but it's improving right now. It's kind of like my son just started his sophomore year in high school. Like his grades are like going to be okay, like not great. But we're looking at an environment where the dollar should be strengthening, given those relative economic trends, with Europe starting to see their economic surprise index rolling over here. So we do think that one of the key elements that's been driving that outperformance of international equities has been the currency development plus multiple expansion. We actually see that fading here as markets can start to think about those relative differentials and stop just the focus on politics.
And Emily, you mentioned earnings, and in hindsight, the second quarter earnings were much, much better than expected here. Can you extrapolate that out for the back half of this year into next?
Yeah, I mean, the bar actually is not that high going into the next couple of quarters. Analysts are penciling in mid-single digit growth. I think 2026 looks a bit elevated, around 15% expected there. That probably is a little bit more difficult to get to. But again, we do think that these higher quality companies have the ability to deliver on these earnings estimates, and that's a key reason we think there remains opportunities.
I mean, I know you're shocked you're not doing so much stock-by-stock security analysis, but I just did a wicked fancy technical chart on NASDAQ 100, and the pullback is comical. I mean, there isn't a pullback, folks, is the punchline on a monthly chart. When you study the spirit of this for investment of retirement capital, is the mystery about the revenue line or somewhere down in the earnings statement?
I think it's really looking at margins. So when you think about top line revenue growth, it actually surprised on the upside this past quarter. I think that's one thing a lot of people didn't really think about. Companies can continue to pass on some of these higher prices. We're seeing that in the revenue growth. The cost of capital, though, is still elevated. You know, everybody's expecting the Fed to cut. It might not be as much as investors expect. So companies are going to need to contend with that higher cost of capital. Margins are probably going to start to shrink. If you're a company whose margins are shrinking, you can either raise prices or cut costs. And we think companies are more likely to cut costs. We'll see that transmitted through the employment side of the Fed's mandate here. So we want to look for those companies that have a better chance of maintaining those margins. Again, not to repeat myself, but those high quality companies make the most sense in that environment.
Emily, so in a world of fixed income, how much credit risk are you suggesting clients take these days?
We really prefer high quality duration. Investment grade corporate bonds are really the sweet spot to us in terms of those elevated yields. The high yield bond market is just not pricing any risk in at all. Like, wake me up when high yield bond spreads widen. We're still below 3%.
Right.
The high yield bond market barely yawned in the midst of some of the recent volatility that we've seen. So, yields, yeah, they're just below their 20-year averages, but spreads, again, below 3%. It's almost the tightest we've ever been. It was 233 back in 2007. So I think some credit's okay, but we're really not reaching for risk when you have the ability to get a mid-single digit return out of high quality bonds.
Emily,
number for China.
How's it going, Angela?
So there's still some uncertainty out there, but there's pretty good confidence that between negotiating with suppliers, diversifying sources, and things like that, that they can mitigate a large portion of the cost. But it's just a question of how long they can sustain that mitigation before inevitably they start having to pass a little bit of price through.
And a lot of that is kind of unanswerable right now until they go through the whole process. Jen, remind us of where Dollar Tree is at with the divestiture, the shedding of the Family Dollar chain that did not work out as planned. Is that completely off its books now?
It is. They completed the transaction on July 5th, so it's completely off the books. It gives them a lot of liberty to really focus on the business and really drive growth in what's always been the bigger part of their business. And there's a lot of opportunity out there. They talked about gaining share. And there have been some retailers that have gone under in the last year and a half that makes it a great opportunity for them as a more focused organization to take advantage of that. And that would be Party City, to a lesser extent, Joann Fabrics. These present opportunities for Dollar Tree to really execute on their strategy and hopefully continue driving some top line growth.
So what's kind of the expectation here for just kind of the holiday season broadly defined, Jen?
Yeah, for the holidays, I think, the retailers all say that they're pretty well prepared. Consumers, I think, will be ready to spend, but they'll be selective. We're expecting that once inventory is sold out, there won't be a lot of reordering. So this is a holiday season where if there's something specific you want to get, you might want to get it because once it's gone, it might not get replenished or replenished quickly or at the same price. So there's certainly a lot of value seeking, that sort of behavior.
So the takeaway for this holiday season is you see it, you snap it up because it may not come back. Will it ever come back? I mean, you have the removal of the de minimis exemption. So consumers are losing a lot of their DTC access that they once counted on. And these retailers need to think very carefully about how they're going to restock and rebuild their inventory. That's again, I hate to use the word sobering again, but it's a whole new mindset for consumers.
It is. It's a new mindset for retailers as well, where we've already seen them kind of scale back on some of their ordering. They had a lot of orders that were canceled, waiting on tariffs. Now they've kind of put some through. But what we're hearing is that they're very closely managing their inventory. And so, if a hot new toy sells out, in like early November, they may or may not be getting more in. It's going to be an interesting holiday season this year for sure.
Paul, bare shelves.
I don't know. And shop early, shop often, I guess is kind of the way to go this year. Jen Bartash is Senior Retail Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us from Princeton via that Zoom thing. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see you.
Really important to be prepared for the fall and the winter. A great way to do that is to have the lozenges and the drops from my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. You can get the drops in 100 count per bag. You can get it in blueberry, cherry flavor, or in honey and lemon. Very high quality. Right when you have that irritation in your throat, take them right away to mitigate the problem. Super important for this season, fall or winter. And I also have the lozenges, which are larger than the drops, in elderberry zinc in stock. You get 21 in each bag. Get a few bags, for your home or for work, get the lozenges and the drops, be prepared. This fall is going to be a problem, so you're going to have to be prepared. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com.
Catalina Crunch Snack Mix. Make your taste buds smile with craveably crunchy, snackable satisfaction. A good source.
US President Donald Trump not wasting any time responding to what was the big show in Beijing, the Truth Social post he wrote. May President Xi and the wonderful people of China have a great and lasting day of celebration. Please give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un as you conspire against the United States of America. For more on this, let's bring in Dave Rank. He's a former career diplomat in the US Foreign Service and was Deputy Chief of Mission in Beijing. I'm eager to get your perspective on all of this. But first, picking up on Donald Trump's calling this a sort of conspiracy against the US. This was clearly a show of force to an audience of one, the US president. Was this a product of Trump's own doing, to your mind?
Oh, I think to some degree. I'm not sure, though, Xi Jinping or the Chinese would see this as a directed just at Donald Trump. I mean, it was they were looking at a Chinese audience, they were looking at an audience around the world, and of course looking at the United States as sort of one of many audiences for this. But your colleague talking about Kim Jong-un and the importance of that meeting, I think it really is significant. You look at 8 years ago when Donald Trump came in his first term in office. There was kind of a truce between the U.S. and China on trade issues, so that as Washington put pressure on Beijing to squeeze Pyongyang to come to the table, and that's completely changed now. Now it's very clear that there's not only sort of trade conflict, but also Beijing is making clear that North Korea is as close or closer than ever.
Mm. So this visual of Xi flanked by Putin and Kim is just remarkable. And I guess we should ask just how concerned the US in principle should be about this. And beyond the show of unity against the West, are there any tangible outcomes from this summit, this parade that we've seen today that worry you?
Well, a lot of it should worry people in the United States. I was less struck by Xi Jinping standing next to Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin, although that's significant, than the fact that you had the leader of India there, and that's probably more significant. I would say almost.
There's two significance of this parade and the photographing of the leaders of the different countries. One, an economic, and one, a military perspective. Economically, they're trying to work together because of their perception, rightfully or wrongfully, of hegemonic power by the United States and using its connections with the dollar and of economies to will other nations. Now, sometimes that should be used in foreign affairs, right? We should exercise the use of the petrodollar, the use of our currency, and sanction nations that should be sanctioned. But there's also been a hubris in the United States that have led to other nations to think that we are a little capricious. Maybe a lot, maybe more than a little, right? Now, the other aspect to this is not just the economic dimension, it's the military dimension. This is reminiscent of Cold War type stuff. This is reminiscent of World War II, even before the Cold War, all right, even during World War II and the alignment of nations for war. Now, if we take what Niall Ferguson is saying, that we are in a Cold War 2.0, and that about 6 months ago, or maybe a little bit more, that it turned hot, then perhaps these pictures are really reminiscent of who our enemies are in this World War III that's starting to emerge. Or maybe it's not hot war, maybe it's lukewarm, where it's not just proxy wars during the Cold War, but something a little bit more violent, but not as violent as World War II. But this, when you look at this picture, you see Putin and Xi and Kim Jong-un. The common thread here is communism. And 2.5 of Asian ethnicity, meaning Russia has an Asian ethnicity, but also European ethnicity. Obviously, China and North Korea have an Asian ethnicity. So there is an ethnic aspect to this. There's an alignment of their economies to try to circumvent the hegemonic power of the United States. And there's an alignment of military. So when I see this, I see war. I hear in the distance a rumbling of war coming to the fore.
For years, American presidents have courted India as a counterweight to China, and in a very short amount of time, we have seen that.
And keep in mind, and I've been doing a couple videos on this, it seems as though the house of cards, or the stability that we thought the stability we thought we had in the international arena seems to be unraveling. And that unraveling does coincide with the death of Kissinger. Now, perhaps we are marching towards war that's very similar to World War II. But in World War II, at least the beginning, nuclear was not available for warfare. It was only at the end of the war. And you have the understanding of biological war, and using that, AI and drone technologies. So we have more weapons that can be used to escalate this thing rapidly without real foreign policy makers trying to prevent it from happening. So the death of Kissinger perhaps is a sign that we are moving into a similar theme, a similar rhythm of World War that happened in the 1900s.
The U.S.-India relationship crumbled.
I think it's important to point out that while this was a huge show of sort of military and diplomatic force to a degree, certainly, with no involvement of the US or indeed the West, and for some time we've heard from that part of the world, from these leaders very specifically, that there is a new world order sort of burgeoning. I just wonder, when you go beyond the kind of optics of this, how much sort of, real sort of substance there is to this sort of tectonic changing of plates, as it were, when it comes to sort of geopolitics?
Sure, and I think that's exactly the right question, because parades are symbolism. They're about showing, seeing who shows up and what shows up, the kinds of equipment. But does China have the ability to step in and play the role, or the interest in playing the role that the United States has played for the last decades? I think of commercially, is China willing to be the buyer of last resort, as the United States was up until really the first Trump presidency? And militarily, is China interested and willing to be to play a role outside of its immediate neighborhood? Certainly, I see the pictures that are being on the screen now. It has a lot of equipment that would make it a very serious adversary, if it were to play an outsized role.
And I've got a guest to speak sort of, military assets, military investment tactics going forward. So I want to leave that just for the moment, because I do want you to speak to whether you believe that the US has a clear China strategy at present. Former Congresswoman and defense expert Jane Harman has told CNN that she thinks there is no US strategy towards China at this point, just tactics. Just have a listen.
I don't think we have any strategy.
The use of AI is exploding. It's a key enabler to deploy AI is networking by combining HPE and.
I don't think we have any strategy. I think we have a series of tactics which shift on the day. And I think foreign leaders understand this. They don't want Trump to hate them, so they play him. She has a long-term strategy to supplant the liberal world order with a Chinese world order. And he's playing Trump beautifully. Everywhere we leave, he goes. Think Africa.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah. It's hard to argue with that. And particularly on the point, yes, I mean, there has been a long-term U.S. strategy towards China, not always perfectly executed. I think that clearly is in the past. Now it is a collection of tactics, and they are often not supporting tactics. So I think that analyst Jane Harman is right in the big picture and in the small picture as well.
Which I assume I'm right in saying worries you, correct?
I spent a long time working on that imperfectly executed but consistent strategy towards China over 3 decades of my career. I'm not sure where that goes, and I wish I had more confidence. If there's a strategy, it is one of the best kept secrets in America, because it certainly looks like a collection of tactics or knee-jerk reactions or sort of personal wins at times. And that's a bad place to be. The rest of the world, for better or worse, could look at the United States and reasonably predict what we were going to do. I don't think you can do that anymore, and it's not a great way to run a railroad. So, Xi Jinping, I think, is offering an alternative that isn't attractive to some countries, but there's something to be said for predictability. And
Trump is in the Oval Office with the Polish president, so let's listen in.
Well, I've already done that with regard to India, and we're doing it with regard to other things. And I put out a truth last night. You saw that, and I was the one that brought it up. I said they're only doing this. They're looking to when they did what they did. I thought it was a beautiful ceremony. I thought it was very, very impressive. But I understood the reason they were doing it, and they were hoping I was watching, and I was watching. My relationship with all of them is very good. We're going to find out how good it is over the next week or two. I think that we helped China very much, as you know, when they talk about freedom. And I don't believe that, and maybe I'm wrong, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't believe that America, that the United States was acknowledged for helping China to gain its freedom. But perhaps that was just that was a sleight of hand. I mean, I was very surprised. I watched the speech last night. President Xi is a friend of mine, but I thought that the United States should have been mentioned last night during that speech because we helped China very, very much.
What was the reason? What was the reason? Do you think they should have been mentioned? You know, described many times your frustration and disappointment with Putin, but there's no action since you took your office.
How do you know there's no? How do you know there's no action? Really? Wait. Who are you with? Okay. How do you know there's no action? Would you say that putting secondary sanctions on India, the largest purchaser outside of China, they're almost equal? Would you say there was no action? That cost hundreds of billions of dollars to Russia. You call that no action? And I haven't done phase 2 yet or phase 3. But when you say there's no action, I think you ought to get yourself a new job, because if you remember, 2 weeks ago I said, if India buys, India's got big problems, and that's what happened. So don't tell me about that.
Right now, there have been survivors of Jeffrey Epstein speaking at a press conference on Capitol Hill. They're calling for these case files, these documents to be released. And Thomas Massey, who is sponsoring this position to get the House to vote on these documents, says he doesn't think you're implicated in these files, but many of your friends and donors may be, and he says that's why the Justice Department is redacting them and slow walking the release. Is the Justice Department protecting any friends or donors, sir?
So this is a Democrat hoax that never ends. You know, it reminds me a little of the Kennedy situation. We gave them everything over and over again, more and more and more, and nobody's ever satisfied. And from what I understand, I could check, but from what I understand, thousands of pages of documents have been given. But it's really a Democrat hoax, because they're trying to get people to talk about something that's totally irrelevant to the success that we've had as a nation since I've been president. Even if you look at D.C. right now, D.C., it's a totally safe zone. It's called the safe zone. That's a term. It's a term of art. It's a safe zone because it's very safe. You can walk down the street now and nothing's going to happen. No crime, no murders, no nothing. Because we had a lot of problems with certain places, and we still do. All run by Democrats, or for the most part run by Democrats. So what they're trying to Epstein hoax is get people to talk about that instead of speaking about the tremendous success, like ending 7 wars. I ended 7 wars. Nobody's going to talk about, because they're going to talk about the Epstein, whatever. I understand that we were subpoenaed to give files, and I understand we've given thousands of pages of files. And I know that no matter what you do, it's going to keep going. And I think it's enough, because I think we should talk about the greatness of our country and the success that we're having. I think we're probably having, according to what I read, even from 2 people in this room, we're having the most successful 8 months of any president ever. And that's what I want to talk about. That's what we should be talking about, not the Epstein hoax. I have no message to President Putin. He knows where I stand, and he'll make a decision one way or the other. Whatever his decision is, we'll either be happy about it or unhappy. And if we're unhappy about it, you'll see things happen.
So, can you give us a sense of what the U.S. policy, or what you're trying to achieve with the aircraft carriers, or the boats, I should say, in near Venezuela, and also the boat that you mentioned yesterday where 11 people were killed? What was found on that boat, and why were the men killed instead of taken?
On the boat, you had massive amounts of drugs. We have tapes of them speaking. There was a massive amount.
Trump says may put more soldiers in Poland. World War III is starting to emerge.
Yet again, when they watch that tape, they're going to say, let's not do this. We have to protect our country, and we're going to. Venezuela's been a very bad actor. They've been, as you know, they've been sending millions of people into our country. Many of them Tren de Aragua, some of the worst gangs, some of the worst people anywhere in the world in terms of gangs. And we had some in Washington, D.C. We took care of them very quickly, but they're out of here. They're gone. But Venezuela's been very bad, both in terms of drugs and sending some of the worst criminals anywhere in the world into our country. They emptied out, you don't know this, but they emptied out their prisons in Venezuela, and they emptied them out into the United States of America. And that's part of the problem we have. We're getting them out. We're getting them out rapidly, but it's caused a tremendous problem. And Pete and all of the people that are working very hard to rectify the stupidity of the Biden administration, allowing these people to pour into our country with open borders. We are paying a big price as a country for the incompetence of the Biden administration. But think of it, opened up prisons, drug dealers, drug lords, everything coming out of Venezuela. They said, and we said, we're not going to put up with it anymore. So Venezuela has been one of the worst actors in the whole group, and we have a group of pretty bad actors.
Are you lying? Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. At the end of this month, the government, Congress has to pass a budget. Do you think we can avoid a government shutdown?
Yeah, I do. I think the Republicans will vote for an extension. We won't have any Democrat votes. We could give the greatest budget ever. Tax cut of 50%, everybody taken care of, perfect for women, perfect for men, perfect for minorities, perfect for everything, and we wouldn't get one vote for the Democrats because they've lost their mind. They are so deranged. They have Trump derangement syndrome, and I don't want to burn the Republican Party with it, but they really are. They've become almost sick. They actually think there is a disease. It's called Trump derangement syndrome. They've got it. No matter what we did, no matter how good, you could give them everything that they've ever dreamed of, and you wouldn't get one vote. These are sick people, and I think we're going to have a tremendous midterm. We just approved the largest tax decrease in the history of our country. We have things when you think of it, no tax on tips, no tax on Social Security for our seniors, no tax on overtime, deductions when you...
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the dual-purpose deodorants. They will help to detoxify your body, and you use it as a deodorant every day. It's for males and females, has no aluminum or baking soda. It's made from essential oils from the Himalayas. Very high-quality ingredients. You can get it in citrus or in peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. Get a few bars for your household. Please help support the work that I do. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last.
We passed is amazing, but the Democrats, I don't believe, will get one vote. It's very anti-crime. We want anti-crime. They're in favor of crime. We're against crime. You know, they gave us things like men playing in women's sports, open borders for everybody, transgender for everybody. I mean, they want a transgender for all of the crazy things that they were saying. And, you know, people would say they're 80-20 issues. I say they were 97-3. I would say 97-3. Nobody knows who the three are. This is the best issue of all. They are against preventing crime. They are fighting us. I want to go into Chicago and have this incompetent governor that doesn't want us. Do you know that this weekend 72 people were shot in Chicago? I'm embarrassed to say it in front of the president of Poland. 11 people were killed. 72 people were shot. Last week, 7 people were killed in Chicago, a place which is probably your number one place. I hate to say it.
Yeah, well,
but safe, and we got to keep it safe. But 7 people were killed. The week before that, 5 people were killed, and 21 people were shot. This is in 3 weeks. So in 3 weeks, I lost almost 35 people were killed. It could have been stopped. If you look at Washington, D.C., 3 weeks ago, it was the same or worse. And now it's considered a totally safe zone. Restaurants are open, they're bustling. Restaurants, you have to see, restaurants were dying. Nobody wanted to go out, they didn't want to be attacked, they didn't want to be mugged, they didn't want to be attacked even in the restaurant. And you take a look at what's happened. Friends of mine that haven't gone to a restaurant in 4 years, one of them went out 5 times in the last 2 weeks to a restaurant with his family. They feel totally safe. Washington, D.C. is a totally safe city. You're not reporting any crime because there is none. They said crime is down 87%, and I said, no, it's not. It's down 100%. We have a great thing going. I could do that with Chicago. We could do that with New York. We could do it with Los Angeles. So we're making a determination now. Do we go to Chicago, or do we go to a place like New Orleans, where we have a great governor, Jeff Landry, who wants us to come in and straighten out a very nice section of this country that's become quite tough, quite bad. So we're going to be going to maybe Louisiana, and you have New Orleans, which has a crime problem. We'll straighten that out in about 2 weeks. It'll take us 2 weeks, easier than D.C. But we can straighten out Chicago. All they have to do is ask us. To go into Chicago, if we don't have the support of some of these politicians, but I'll tell you who is supporting us, the people of Chicago. And I sort of want them to let it be known. They are incompetent people. A guy like Gavin Newsom, he's the governor of a state that if we didn't go into Los Angeles with our soldiers, with our National Guard, you wouldn't even be having the Olympics there.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the great products I offer. The reason why I'm laughing is that we have a president that we will never see anything like this ever again in our lifetime. So you might as well just enjoy the ride. He's bombastic. I would consider him a fresh breath of air. And he's definitely not a politician. And it's almost like a reality show in a way, in a strange way, but he's real, with all of his flaws. It's fascinating to watch.
It's going to be years before they are allowed to build the house. And Karen Bass is grossly incompetent. And this is a very incompetent guy. I watched him with the hands. I'm saying, what's going on with the hands? There's something wrong with him. You watch him. There's something wrong with this guy. But more importantly, he didn't allow the water to come from the Pacific Northwest. They have tremendous amounts of water in California. People don't know. They send the water out to the Pacific Ocean. So I demanded it be open. If that were open during the fire, before the fire, you wouldn't have had the fire because all the sprinklers would have worked in the houses. They had no water. They had no water in the fire hydrants. You wouldn't have had the fire. So it would have been put out after one house, 2 houses. But he stopped.
And there are many people out there that were saying that there was an orchestrated effort to burn down the homes, to rebuild for low-income housing, to create a more of a 5-minute city. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it does seem awfully odd. It does seem like it was orchestrated. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the turmeric. This will soak up free radicals and bring down pro-inflammatory cytokines. By bringing down inflammation, you're helping your immune system and your cardiovascular system. Lignans will help with your immune system and your endocrine system. They'll soak up free radicals, bring down inflammation. Take it every day. Ashwagandha root will help to control cortisol levels and blood glucose levels and bring down inflammation. When you stack these together, it's a powerful stack for your immune system and your cardiovascular system. When you take the stack, you're reducing the chances of plaque formation. When you take the stack, you're boosting up your immune system. And that's going to be really important, especially in the fall and the winter. So be prepared, go to my store, get the ashwagandha root, the lignans, and the turmeric. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order.
I'm historian. This is the first time in Polish history, in 20th century and the 21st century, that the Poles are happy that we have foreign soldiers in Poland. So the American soldiers are the part of our society nowadays. We have almost 10,000 soldiers, and this is the signal to the whole world and also to the Russian Federation that we are together. But we are not like the Poland free riders in Europe and in NATO. Mr. President Trump knows it, because our GDP for military service achieved 4.7. So we are probably the one NATO nation which is on this level, and we will not stop. Me, as the President of Poland, we are going to achieve 5% of GDP for military service, but with American soldiers on Polish soil, we solidify and we are secure.
Just about that. You know, Poland was one of two nations that paid more than they were supposed to with NATO. I don't know if anyone knows that, but there were two nations, and Poland paid more than they were supposed to. They thought it was low. And by the way, since then, at my request, they raised it from 2% to 5%. But Poland was one of two nations that paid more than they were supposed to, which was a very nice thing. Yeah. Never even thought about it until just now. Never even thought. It wouldn't have been my place to be there.
Is it a restaurant in DC? You haven't gone to.
I might. Sure.
You haven't gone to one in either of your terms that wasn't.
How do you know? How do you know?
Because I and many other.
Do you want me to prove you wrong? Do you want me to prove you wrong?
Yes, please.
But I will. I think it's something we should consider doing. Love to do it. I love the White House food, but after a while, I can see going to a nice restaurant. It's safe. If you would have said, like, the Governor Moore wanted me to go and walk through Baltimore with him, and I said, you know, I think I'm a brave guy, but there's no reason to be stupid. They have crime that's at levels that nobody's ever seen before in Baltimore. They've done a terrible job. We go into Baltimore, straighten it out very quickly, too. You know why? They respect our soldiers. You see our soldiers. They respect our soldiers. We go there, too. But we're going to have people asking us to go. They're going to want to, and I think the people of those places the politicians are not in tune with the people. The people in Chicago, the people in Baltimore, the people in all of the places we talk about, they want to see us there. And I think we're pretty much waiting till we get asked and properly. We're doing them a big service. Yeah.
Talk about how historic these tariffs have been bringing revenue, additional revenue for our country. You also in this report they could possibly replace federal income tax.
Possible.
Do you think that
someday it's possible? It used to be. So if you go back to 1913 is when they ended tariffs. We were the richest ever from 1850. It was all tariffs. We didn't have income taxes. From 1850 to 1913. In the 1887s, about 1887, they had the Great National Tariff Act. And it was a group of people that got together because our country was so rich, they didn't know what to do with the money. We had so much money, they didn't know what to do. It was a group of very prominent people that were set up to hand out money to everybody because we were the richest we ever were. Proportionately, we were in 1887, around that time, even in 1913. We ended them in 1913. How did that work out? And then we went to the income tax system, and then we had the Depression. And by the way, a lot of people try and say that, oh, tariffs with the Depression. No, they ended in 1913, and then we went to income tax, and then in 1929 you had the Depression. They did try and bring it back in 1931-32, but the Depression had long started, and this poor, beautiful nation was gone. It was gone. We suffered for 25 years. It took 25, 30 years to really recover from the Depression. And we don't ever want to see that happen again. The tariffs are vital to the success of this country. When I say I ended 7 wars, at least half of those wars were ended because of the power of tariffs. I was able to say, well, we're not doing any business with you, or if you go into war, we're putting a big tariff on you. And all of a sudden they announced that the war was settled. I settled 7 different wars, one going 31 years, look at the Congo and Rwanda, look at that, 31 years, 10 million people dead. I got it settled. And a little bit of that one, less than in some cases, had to do with trade and had to do with tariffs. So, you know, tariffs are vital to our country. And just so you know, other countries use them on us, but I just use them a lot better. We're in a much better position. We have trillions of dollars coming into our country. If we didn't have tariffs, we would be a very poor nation, and we would be taken advantage of by every other nation in the world, friend and foe. We're not going to let that happen. And we have a very, very big case in the Supreme Court. I can only say this. Our country has a chance to be unbelievably rich again, but it can also be unbelievably poor again. If we don't win that case, our country is going to suffer so greatly, so greatly. But I think we're going to have a big victory. Even if you look at the people that brought the case, they're foreign oriented. They're foreign. Countries have taken advantage of the United States for so many years. And I started with China. You know, last term, I took in hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs from China. But when COVID came, the last thing I was going to do is we're going to tariff France and Italy and, you know, others, Spain, where they were doing so badly. But now we made a deal with the European Union where they're paying us almost $1 trillion. And they're happy to do it. You know what? They're happy it's done. These deals are all done. I guess we'd have to unwind them. We've done deals with Japan, with South Korea. We've done deals with many countries and others to come. And if we didn't have the power, prestige, and dignity of tariffs, and I used them wisely, and people respect America again, and we've become a rich country again. The money coming in is incredible. And again, they use them on us. If we didn't have them, they would use them on us, and we would have no way to fight them. We would be a third world nation. So I think it's one of the most important cases I've ever seen go before the Supreme Court of the U.S.
Latvia put in a 2-week deadline to agree to talks with Volodymyr Zelensky. That deadline is now nearly approached. Can you give us any indication when you will make it?
Well, I'm having a conversation with him very shortly, and I'll know pretty much what we're going to be doing. We've taken very strong action, as you know, and in other ways we've taken very strong action. But I'll be speaking to him over the next few days, and we're going to see. I'm going to know exactly what's happening. I'm not happy with all the people. You had 7,819 people killed last week. Russian soldiers and Ukraine soldiers, right? Not American soldiers, not soldiers from Poland, but they're human beings. They're souls. They have parents. They wave goodbye to their parents, and their parents never see them again. That's the end of them. Over a stupid war. And I want to see it stopped. Now, we have stopped the money we send weapons to NATO. They pay full price. We don't, you know, Biden spent $350 billion so stupidly. And it was one of the reasons that this whole thing happened.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Help support the work that I do. I do these videos for free, but I really want you to purchase the products and get healthy. By getting healthy, you're going to be more productive as a citizen. But not just that, we're going to be able collectively to bring down healthcare costs in the society. And you'll have more vitality and more longevity. And usually when people are healthier, they're happier. It's not always the case, but there is a strong correlation there. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Gladiator Barley. This supplement is a high-density protein that will help you to build muscle. It stacks well with Boomer Boost and Myotrol. Gladiator Barley will help to build muscle when you're doing the resistance training, and it will bring down inflammation, detoxify your body, and soak up free radicals. So take this every day. This is a month's supply. Mix it with soft foods or filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk. But take it every day and do some resistance training. It stacks well with Myotrol and Boomer Boost. Another great supplement that I have is a dual-purpose collagen. This will help to improve your skin, your hair, your nails, your musculature, your bone density, your joint health, and cartilage. So please go to my store and get this month's supply powder. This is a very high quality collagen with a typical amino acid profile shown on the screen. You can read the label on my website, but get the collagen, take it every day, do some resistance training. It's going to help with your musculature, your joint health, your bone density. Super important. So please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. Let's go to Bloomberg.
That have nothing to do with Poland. One of the first questions asked of the president, do you think the government is going to shut down? Yeah, I do, he said. I think the Republicans will vote for an extension. We won't have any Democrat votes, he said. Jeffrey Epstein in the air as well. This is a day where this is being discussed a lot in Washington. There was a news conference on Capitol Hill brought forth by Ro Khanna and Tom Massey, who are both out with a discharge petition to release the Epstein files. They brought victims of Jeffrey Epstein to the microphones and cameras today. So that's why the president was being asked about this repeatedly. He said, it's really a Democrat hoax. I know that no matter what you do, it's going to keep going. They talked as well about crime, the deployment of National Guard troops, maybe not Chicago. The president just now mentioning that New Orleans could be the next city in line here. And of course, we got to geopolitics as well, the point of this meeting. And they're going to go have lunch now to talk this out. Let's bring in Tyler Kendall. She's at the White House right now to kind of recap what's going on here and what's going to come forth with this day with another world leader in town. Tyler, what do you have for us?
Yeah, hey Joe. It was a relatively warm welcome for the Polish president inside of the White House today, as we know that the war in Ukraine is going to factor heavily in the pair of leaders' conversation. And perhaps one of the more tense moments that we just saw play out, President Trump pushed back against a reporter who accused him of not doing enough to address Russian aggression, suggesting that the U.S. is considering perhaps a second or third round of sanctions against Russia. It's interesting to hear that because we did hear from the Ukrainian President Zelensky earlier this morning, who confirmed he plans to speak with President Trump tomorrow about what the future of a sanctions package could look like, as Ukraine urges allies to step up the economic consequences, and the U.S. urges European allies to mirror them when it comes to the so-called secondary sanctions against those trading partners that import Russian energy supplies. Now, he also talked about this idea that he's going to speak with the Russian President Vladimir Putin in the coming days, but he said as of today, he doesn't have a message for Putin because Putin knows where he stands. He did say that he's considering putting more U.S. troops in Poland, of course, a crucial ally here and a neighbor of Ukraine. I've actually been to one of our U.S. Military installations in Rzeszów, Poland, where we know that U.S. and Polish forces have conducted joint exercises, for example. So that's perhaps one thread line that we could be following here because, Joe, as you well know, Poland is actually one of the largest NATO defense spending contributors per size in Europe, as it's really stepped up to meet President Trump's pledge and push to get our allies on board with contributing more when it comes to military spending.
Yeah, really important, Tyler. Thank you for mentioning phase 2 or phase 3, as President Trump just called it, on secondary sanctions or tariffs, as he likes to say, against Russia. Is that all we have on the schedule here, Tyler? We're going to see these two again, or they go behind closed doors now?
So according to the public schedule, it says they're going to have a private meeting in the cabinet room, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to hear again from President Trump, particularly if there is perhaps something else that he may want to announce later on as these two leaders continue their conversation. You mentioned at the top there are a lot of other threads that we are following, but I'm most keen to see what sort of developments we get, considering it seemed President Trump did confirm that the White House is going to take that IEEPA tariff case all the way to the Supreme Court. We're waiting on that official filing there. As you all know, this is the White House pushing back against that appeals court ruling that President Trump overstepped his authority when it comes to the International Economic Emergency Powers Act that basically could put his entire so-called reciprocal tariff plans at risk. So as we get perhaps more insight from the administration, that could be an update that we get later today.
All right, really great. We always need Tyler's ears on things when we've got a world leader in town. We thank you. Of course, Tyler Ken will be back a little bit later on in the broadcast as we try to follow these two. They're going from the Oval now, as Tyler mentioned, into the cabinet room for a working lunch. Karol Nawrocki, the president of Poland, endorsed by MAGA, a fan of Donald Trump, who, of course, the president just spent some time describing as one who is outspending the minimum requirements when it comes to NATO. Again, I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. Glad you're with us. A little bit of a different start today because we had things underway at the White House. We're going to get down to business with Laura Davison coming up as well. We'll talk to Nick Wadhams from our national security team about some of the takeaways from this meeting today. But we also want to keep tabs on Wall Street for you as well. And for Charlie Pellet at World Headquarters in New York, Lisa Mateo has her view on the markets. Lisa, how's it going?
Well, right now, a bit of a mixed look on Wall Street, Joe. Alphabet, though, giving tech stocks a boost. This is after that judge ruled Google can retain control of Chrome and its partnership with Apple, but has to share some of the search data with rivals. So now shares of Alphabet up more than 8.5%. We have Apple up nearly 3%. Heading over to the NASDAQ, up 0.9%, 209 points. The S&P 500 up 0.3%, 23 points. Alphabet, Apple, Tesla, some of the big names powering that higher. And the Dow is down about 0.3%, down 165 points. Now, the sell-off in government debt lost some momentum as the yield on 30-year treasuries came close to 5% before easing the advance. We'll start with the 30-year, 4.89%. That's down 7 basis points. The yield on the 10-year, 4.21%, and that's down about 5 basis points. The yield on the 2-year, 3.60%, and that's down about 3 basis points. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index off about 0.2%. To earnings we go. We start with Macy's, which also owns Bloomingdale's, Bluemercury. Raised its annual outlook, reported its best comparable sales growth in 3 years. Macy's shares up about 16%. Then shares of Dollar Tree, they're lower, taking a hit down 7%. Discount chain said profit for the current quarter would be little change, and that kind of overshadowed news that the company actually boosted its annual outlook. And it's a profit beat for Campbell's. Its shares up nearly 5% thanks to snack units, cookie sales, particularly Milano white chocolate lineup. After the close, we move on to Hewlett-Packard Enterprise, Salesforce, and American Eagle Outfitters. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now. I'm Lisa Mateo. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash.
Okay, Lisa, many thanks. Lisa Mateo live at World Headquarters in New York. American Eagle, that's going to be a fun call later. How do I know that's going to become a political story in the next 24 hours? We'll see what they have to say on the call. Thank you for being with us here on the Wednesday edition. We're just getting started here on the early side of Balance of Power. You know, we do this twice a day at high noon, again at 5 p.m. And we typically have a lot of different stuff to talk about by the time we get to the late program here. Today, it is about the visit, as you just heard live on Bloomberg, the visit from the president of Poland. They're retiring for a bit of lunch now in the cabinet room. The president at one point was asked about whether he was going to go out to a restaurant to, I guess, kind of show how safe things are around here. And he made the case that the food's pretty good at the White House. If you ever eaten a White House mess, you know what I'm talking about. They know how to do it down there. So we'll see if anything comes out of this meeting beyond what we just heard. Because it's not only geopolitics in the air, it is also Jeffrey Epstein. As I mentioned a bit earlier, there was a news conference up on Capitol Hill. Ro Khanna and Tom Massey, the D and the R, with a discharge petition, as they call it, that would force a vote on the floor to release the Epstein files. They are apparently 2 votes away, and they just held a news conference with Epstein victims. There's more where this came from as well. The documents are starting to be released. 33,000 files from the GOP leadership. This is coming from the Oversight Committee. 97% of them, we understand, were already in the public domain. Robert Garcia, a Democrat from California, says, quote, there is no mention of any client list. He's the ranking member, the top Democrat on the Oversight Committee. As you just heard, the president was asked about it. Quote, it's really a Democrat hoax. I know no matter what you do, it's going to keep on going, referring to this never-ending saga about the Epstein files. Laura Davison was watching and listening along with us. Our Deputy Bureau Chief here in Washington with us now at the desk in the nation's capital. It's great to see you. I suspect he'd like to end that conversation as quickly as possible. We covered a lot of topics. To call that a Democrat hoax while the victims are on the other side of town is an interesting choice. We're going back to this being a hoax now.
Yes, and it's clear that Trump really still hasn't figured out how he wants to grapple with this politically. Mike Johnson tried to shut all this down by sending all the lawmakers home early at the end of July, early August. Really, what it turns out has happened is they just had more time to plan, so when they came back, Epstein has roared back with a vengeance. You have the Oversight Committee, who is releasing documents and tranches. As you mentioned, a lot of this was stuff that was already out there, but they're planning to release more. You have Democrats and Republicans in the House. This never happens. Working together, holding joint press conferences, bringing up these privilege resolutions, basically something to force a vote on releasing more documents. This is going to be a big problem that is going to not only sort of consume the political space, but also really push aside any of the policy stuff they want to do. They've been talking about another budget bill. They need to fund the government by the end of the month. They're talking about a DC crime bill. But while Republicans are loggerheads over this, not a lot can happen.
Interesting that we're only 2 votes away, so this really could happen, but then it would presumably have to pass the Senate and be signed by the president. Are we going a little too far with this whole idea?
It's certainly possible. The Senate is a whole different beast. And senators are really, not focused on this issue as much. This is not divided Republicans the same way, and they're really focused on, they've got a busy week. They've got RFK Jr. In tomorrow after all of the kerfuffle at the CDC last week, plus Stephen Myron. They got to confirm him for the Fed chair.
We're going to be talking with Elizabeth Warren on the late edition, who's gearing up right now for that hearing with Stephen Myron. We could digress for just a moment on this. After what's been taking place with the Federal Reserve, with Lisa Cook, how chippy is this hearing going to be?
This is going to be wild. Meanwhile, just a bit of counter program. You have Bill Pulte, who has scheduled a press conference in Washington with more news on Lisa Cook. We don't know what this is. It could range from the very mundane to, perhaps another criminal referral. We have no clue. But this is going to be a lot of different things happening. Plus, tomorrow we may also hear from the judge about whether Lisa Cook can continue her work as a Fed governor while this proceeds. But you can imagine that tempers are going to be hot. And Stephen Myron, he's usually a pretty cool fellow, but a testy exchange with Elizabeth Warren could be something you see on your social media feed.
Before we move to geopolitics, we're going to bring Nick Wadhams into the conversation. I want to ask you about crime. President saying, I want to go into Chicago. Yesterday, he said Chicago's next, but there was more today, Laura, because a lot of us have been asking, what about cities in red states? Do you actually plan to go to any of those metropolitan areas that have even worse crime rates than the city of Chicago? He said, do we go to Chicago or do we go to a place like New Orleans where we have a great governor, Jeff Landry, who wants us to come in and straighten out a very nice section of this country? Is that actually being talked about right now? Is Chicago not a sure thing? And does the White House want to move into a red state to make a point?
Trump still seems very focused on Chicago, but he's also thrown out Baltimore. He's thrown out today New Orleans. He seems to like sort of throwing out having this threat looming and making the state and local government scramble a little bit. This is also what he did with the universities of levying threats on them, having them sort of pre-make some concessions. And even if he still is going to go in, he's sort of already gotten them moving in the direction that he wants and can claim an easier win.
Fascinating. You mentioned Baltimore. He said Governor Moore wanted me to go and walk through Baltimore with him. Remember they had the little social media spat. I said, I think I'm a brave guy, but there's no reason to be stupid. Maybe he'll go to Baltimore for dinner after the National Guard. See if that will work. Okay, geopolitics. That was the point of this. The president of Poland in the Oval Office. And I want to have the voice of our colleague Nick Wadhams, Bloomberg's national security team leader, is also with us here at the table. We've got the best of Bloomberg in Washington today. Nick, thanks for joining here. This was an individual who was endorsed, if you will, by MAGA and is a Trump favorite. What we just heard in the Oval Office, kind of interesting with regard to Russia. The potential for a second or third phase of secondary sanctions or tariffs, as he puts it. What's he talking about? What might we see in the next few days?
Well, that is a great question. The president has, I think, been deliberately vague about what he might plan for Russia. So the suggestion there is that he has a very detailed plan that he would be willing to spool out if Russia doesn't come on board and agree to what the administration sees as this crucial meeting with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The challenge is when you really try to bore down and get details, it's not really clear what exactly they have in mind. So I think the idea would be potentially secondary tariffs, so tariffing China potentially because it imports Russian oil. But we've also been told some of our reporting is essentially that the administration recognizes that would be a potentially poison chalice because, if you really go after China, you start to potentially have big problems with the global economy. So it's another situation where the president is making a threat, but the follow through very uncertain at this point.
Well, I'm going to ask you more about China because the visuals coming from China are wild this week. With regard to Putin, let's listen to what Donald Trump actually said when he was asked about the president of Russia a short time ago. Listen.
I have no message to President Putin. He knows where I stand, and he'll make a decision one way or the other. Whatever his decision is, we'll either be happy about it or unhappy. And if we're unhappy about it, you'll see things happen.
So this is interesting because Vladimir Putin is in China right now, as we mentioned. This is quite the post on Truth Social last night. The president writes, the big question to be answered is whether or not President Xi of China will mention the massive amount of support and blood the U.S. gave to China in order to help it secure its freedom from a very unfriendly foreign invader. He's referring to the military parade over there celebrating China's conquests in World War II. He's appearing with Vladimir Putin. And he writes, "May President Xi and the wonderful people of China have a great and lasting day of celebration. Please give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, who's also there, as you conspire against the United States of America." What was he thinking when he wrote that? He was just with Vladimir Putin.
I mean, that's a great question. I think what you're seeing here is the president essentially trying to deflect. I mean, listen, when you see those three leaders meeting together in Beijing, in some ways, it makes me think that this amounts to a real, in some ways, failure of what we have seen in U.S. policy in the last several years. I mean, ever since the Ukraine war started, the Biden administration plan was to try to split Russia and China away from each other. So they imposed sanctions, they issued toughly worded statements, they tried to shine a spotlight and reveal a lot of the intelligence that showed China was not directly putting its own weapons on the battlefield in Ukraine, but certainly helping Russia and keeping Russia close. And they really tried to split them apart. Now you see this very warm meeting. Russia and China appear closer and closer than they have in a long time. And what is President Trump is essentially relegated to the sidelines on this. I mean, it's exactly the kind of image that, he was asked about this, are you bothered by this meeting? He said, no, sort of go ahead. So you sort of see him, it almost feels like damage control.
Yeah, it was quite the lineup, Laura, to see these three. This was, of course, the day after Prime Minister Modi was with President Xi, and they were hugging, shaking hands, laughing. The big meeting in the limousine. Is that what it was? Donald Trump saw the meeting in the limousine and started to feel like he was missing the party here. And I'll remind everyone, the president of South Korea was in town. It was just 2 weeks ago. The first thing he talked about was how close a friend he is with Kim Jong-un, who we're looking at right now on YouTube. Does he feel left out?
He certainly doesn't like missing a party, and he certainly doesn't like missing one with the optics of that. That's a really big red carpet from both those big grand spectacles. He is less inclined to go to some of these big, the G20 and other those. He doesn't like hanging out there for a whole long time. But when it's these very powerful people who he has looked up to and at times been very expressed a lot of admiration for, this is something that is clearly bothering him. He was very quick to deflect and almost wanted to protest too much.
Boy, I'll tell you, remember the axis of evil? President George W. Bush, what was it then? Iran, Iraq, I can't even know, North Korea. You look at these three here, you've got Russia, China, North Korea. Is this the new axis? Is this like the Mount Rushmore of bad guys?
I mean, I don't think we should, to give the president too much the benefit of the doubt, but we shouldn't also discount the possibility that this is a meeting that is really designed to project a degree of unity that is not actually there. Yes, there is a lot of cooperation between Russia and China. Correct. I mean, there is cooperation between Russia and China. There is North Korea is largely supported by both of those countries too, but China knows, its trade relationship with the United States is far more valuable to it than the sort of the geopolitical alliance it gets with Russia. I mean, when you really get down to brass tacks, dollars and cents, China understands how deep its interdependence is with the United States. So, I don't think you can also discount the possibility that they're doing this precisely as a jab a little bit against President Donald Trump. He's tried to make it look like there's a lot of division between these countries, so they get together, they do a meeting, they shake hands. But what actually comes of it? Yes, there may be some deepening ties between Russia and China over Ukraine. North Korea has been involved to some degree in the Ukraine war, but beyond that, this is not a relationship that is in any way going to threaten the economic ties the U.S. has with China.
Reality check, as usual, from Nick Wadhams. We didn't get a military parade, guys, but we got a flyover. Did you see that from when the president of Poland arrived? We got a flyover of F-35s and another one F-16s, missing man. That's just part of the trick now. When the president's out with a world leader, we got a flyby?
I think this is a classic example of a second-term president. He suddenly knows all the buttons.
He knows who to call.
To press to have a big parade.
That includes the Diet Coke button. Great conversation. Nick Wadhams, Laura Davison, the best of Bloomberg here in Washington. Many thanks to both of your insights. The meeting has concluded, at least with the press, but the presidents are now having their working lunch in the cabinet room. We'll let you know if any more news comes from this. We'll assemble our panel next. Jeannie Shanzano and Rick Davis, Bloomberg Politics contributors, are with us for the ride today, and we'll have a lot more live from the nation's capital. Thanks for being with us on the radio and on YouTube, only on Bloomberg.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the heirloom barley. This will help to detoxify your body, bring down inflammation, and soak up free radicals. Important to take every day. Also, you can stack it with or take separately the Boomer Boost. Boomer Boost has 68 nutrients that will target multiple systems. They'll target heart and vascular system, brain function, musculature, increase your energy levels, and rev up your metabolism. So take it every day. It's a powder. It's a month's supply. You can mix it with soft foods, filtered water, a smoothie, or even with milk. And you'll notice that you're going to have the energy levels that you need throughout the whole day, and it'll help to get rid of that brain fog. You'll be able to concentrate better. You'll be able to sleep better. You'll recover from a workout, and you can stack it with the heirloom barley or the gladiator barley. So please go to my store and get the Boomer Boost. Also, C60, a very potent antioxidant. Now, my protocol is tied to the whole concept of soaking up free radicals and bringing down inflammation and boost up your immune system and slow the aging process. C60 will soak up those free radicals at the cellular level to help your tissues and your organ systems perform better. By soaking up the free radicals, your mitochondria is going to improve. You're going to have more ATP. You're going to have more energy, cellular energy. Your immune system is going to be performing better. Your endocrine system will be performing better. Your brain function will perform better. You'll soak up those free radicals at the vascular level and reduce plaque formation. And by having healthy neurons, you're going to have better neuroplasticity. And with less stress in the neuron, you're going to maintain the health of the myelin sheath. Super important. And with healthy mitochondria in the neuron and soaking up those free radicals, you're going to have more energy to produce those neurotransmitters. So please go to my store, get the C60 in MCT coconut oil, extra virgin olive oil, or avocado oil. You can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. The higher ounce configuration, the cheaper it is. Use discount 5, you get $5 off any order. If you spend $100 or more, you get a free gift until supplies last. And also add to your order gels. I have it in the tube form and in the quick dispenser. Have some at work, have some at home, just in case you need it. It's a dual purpose product. You can use it as a daily skincare. You can put it on an abrasion, a cut, or a minor burn and help to heal it. You can use it as an aftershave. And if you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, especially in the fall and the winter season, put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your nose, around your ears. Lightly coat your nostrils. It stays active for 5.5 hours. So please go to my store. Be prepared. It's important for you to be prepared for the fall and the winter season. All right, let's listen to Fox News about the mayoral race in New York City.
Growing your agency means helping your SMB clients grow. To them, that means getting new customers and keeping them. Today's customers expect instant responses and great service
So the Wall Street Journal is calling Democratic Virginia gubernatorial candidate Abigail Spanberger the anti-Mandami. Democratic strategist James Carville is even claiming she's, quote, delivered a masterclass of what credible leadership on stopping crime looks like. To discuss as former speechwriter to George W. Bush and Fox News contributor Mark Thiessen. Mark, thanks so much for joining the program.
Good to be with you.
So I don't know if it's a masterclass. She's had some prior comments talking about ICE working with local law enforcement, ripping families apart. So is she really the candidate of being a moderate?
Yeah, apparently not being an insane socialist is a masterclass in being a successful candidate. Look, she's what she's trying to do is she's trying to give us good vibes on crime, and it's good for her. That's smart to do. But she has said that she will repeal Governor Youngkin's executive order requiring state and local police to cooperate with ICE in getting illegal aliens with criminal records off the streets in Virginia. So I don't know how that's given anybody good vibes. She supported getting rid of qualified immunity for police officers so they could be sued for using guns in protecting the people of Virginia. So I don't think she's a real moderate. She's a fake moderate, but she's smart to position herself this way because the Democrats are on the wrong side of all these 80-20 issues. 9 in 10 Americans want to get rid of every illegal alien with a criminal record. 8 in 10 Americans want to think that there shouldn't be men and women's sports. 8 in 10 Americans think that the crime is a major issue, and so she's smart not to mimic Mamdani.
By the way, Mark, she hasn't really taken a strong position on men competing in women's sports, especially when it's Virginia have become the epicenter of parents and decisions in the classroom, and she hasn't given a firm position on that as well.
No, and I believe she voted against legislation in Congress that would have banned men from women's locker rooms. She's a fake moderate, but she's right to present herself as a moderate because look, the idea that Mamdani is the model for the Democrats' path out of the wilderness is insane. First of all, off-year, low turnout elections are not a model for anything going forward. They're never a bellwether for anything nationally. But two, he's a socialist running in the most liberal city in the country in a four-way race against an unpopular mayor and a disgraced former governor that people would blame for killing their grandparents. You're not going to recreate that nationally. That is a unique set of circumstances. The idea that Mamdani is something that people should emulate is insane, but a lot of Democrats are emulating this and coming around on him.
Mark,
and they're going to pay a price when it's not an off-year election.
Just an exit question. Then why is Barack Obama, the chief tactician of the Democratic Party, getting behind someone like Mamdani there?
Because he's a leftist. I mean, the Democrats have not had above 50% approval since Bill Clinton was president. They think that because Barack Obama had 2 terms in office, that he's some sort of a model. They lost over 1,000 elected positions under Obama. They lost 12 Senate seats, 63 House seats, control of both the House and Senate, and over 939 state legislative seats and a dozen governorships. So the idea that this is like their path out of the wilderness, Obama isn't the path out of the wilderness. They need less socialism and more triangulation. Go back to what worked under Clinton. Stop emulating Obama and Mamdani.
Some advice to the Democratic Party. Mark, thanks so much for joining the program.
Thank you.
I'm Steve Juice. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the nitokinase. Nitokinase will help to break up clots. It's fibrinolytic, and it'll help to bring down LDL levels and increase your HDL levels. When you improve your lipid profile, you're reducing the chance of plaque buildup. So please go to my store, take the nitokinase every day to improve your cardiovascular health.
Based in Poland, which was from a basing agreement that Donald Trump did in his first term. Not only going to stay there, but I think he added the punchline that if you need more, we'll send them, which is a highly destabilizing thing between Poland and Russia. Russia doesn't want any U.S. troops in Europe and loves it when Donald Trump talks about America first and withdrawing from some of these venues. So for Trump to do a full turn with another sort of Poland firster sitting next to him and say, "Oh no, we're all in with Poland. We're all in on the defense of Poland. We're all in on stationing troops in Europe." That's got to be that's got to be a stake right through Putin's heart when it comes to the geopolitics of the region right now.
Well, we talked earlier about Donald Trump's post having seen the optics in China. Jeannie, yeah, this is Vladimir Putin once again in China with President Xi. Add Kim Jong-un. This is the trio, the three musketeers we're looking at here. The president writes, "Please give my warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un as you conspire against the United States of America." This was a post on Truth Social aimed at President Xi, and Donald Trump not happy about the optics that he is seeing. Jeannie, how much did this scene in China and Tiananmen Square inform Donald Trump's view about Ukraine?
Yeah, I think we all know that Donald Trump is a visual creature, and the imagery coming out of Tiananmen Square has been dramatic and it has been forceful. And I have to tell you, reading that post and listening to Donald Trump in the Oval Office today, I get a sense that the sarcasm is hiding a bit of envy. Donald Trump wanted this kind of military parade in Washington, D.C. not that long ago. He did not get it, as we all know. He had something, but it wasn't anything to match what we're seeing over there. And this is a very dangerous message to Donald Trump and the United States, because it's not just Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un, and Vladimir Putin. It is the prime minister of one of the largest and most important democracies in the world, India. Modi was there for these talks. And while we're watching in these parades the big military display, this is also about economics as well. And so what we're seeing here is the vision that Xi Jinping, as he smiles with glee at what he has put together here, has long talked about. These are the alliances that he wants to forge. And the fact that you have Modi there, at least for part of it, that says something to the world, both militarily, but more importantly, economically. India has long been one of the non-aligned countries in the world, and it seems to be choosing a partner, or suggesting it could, thanks to Donald Trump's, I believe, his tariffs and some other of these policies that don't make much sense to our allies.
President Trump was asked about this in the Oval a little while ago, Rick, about whether he wanted to go or thought he should be there. He said, I don't think I didn't go. I didn't think I had any place there. Is he upset that he's not up there with these other world leaders, or the fact that it's happening at all? He should have the military parades and the relationships with Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un.
Well, I certainly think there was some aspirational attitudes that Trump had, especially going into this new term, that sometimes how all these guys would welcome him with open arms, and that he would be able to, with the stamp of a finger, solve some of these big geopolitical crises. That is just not the case. And I think what we're really seeing, with all due respect to everybody's comments about how envious he is of not being there, is the reality is that these are not your friends. And they've made it totally clear. They've made it clear in Alaska. They've made it clear in previous meetings. President Xi and his unwillingness to even meet with Trump or have communications at the state level. They've snubbed him over and over and over. And there are some of us who thought that would happen and that he would expect that in his second term. But look, I'm just hopeful that he's gotten the message. These are not our friends. These are our enemies. We need to draw bright lines when dealing with them on statecraft, because they want to see the defeat of the United States. Yeah. And it is a zero-sum game with them. It may not be with us, but it is with them. And I would just remind, look, India has a very good strategic relationship with the United States. We have been working for decades to move them out of the sphere of influence of the Soviets and now the Russians. And we've been having a lot of success with that, especially on security issues. So just because he attends this event in China and hangs out with the axis of evil doesn't mean that we've lost our influence or our partnerships with India.
See, he said axis of evil. I mentioned that earlier. I guess there's just a new seating assignment here in the axis. But the President Trump, that is, Jeannie, is also concerned about the way China is trying to rewrite history when it comes to World War II. And he might be onto something here. Writing in this same truth post, the big question to be answered is whether or not President Xi will mention the massive amount of support and blood that the U.S. gave to China in order to help it secure its freedom from a very unfriendly foreign invaders. He says many Americans died in China's quest for victory and glory. And he talked about this earlier today in the Oval Office. Listen to what the president said.
I think that we helped China very much, as you know, when they talk about freedom. And I don't believe that, and maybe I'm wrong, I hope I'm wrong, but I don't believe that America, that the United States was acknowledged for helping China to get to gain its freedom. But perhaps that was just that was a sleight of hand. I mean, I was very surprised. I watched the speech last night. President Xi is a friend of mine, but I thought that the United States should have been mentioned last night during that speech because we helped China very, very much.
Of course, Jeannie, he shouldn't be surprised, should he?
Well, he absolutely should not be surprised. And this is something we've seen from Donald Trump over and over and over again. He seems to approach everything as if by sheer will of his wonderful personality and his abilities to negotiate and the way that he sparkles, that he is going to magically be able to impact the vision that these many leaders have. And over again, we've seen that personality is not enough for him to achieve these ends. And it's just stunning to hear him say this once again today. If you listen to what Xi Jinping said in that speech, he talked about rejuvenation. What did he mean by that? He meant that when they defeated Japan in World War II, it was the first victory of China over what they described as a century of shame when they were occupied by Japan, and guess who? Britain. Not that Britain occupied them directly, but it was this overbearing of this mammoth Great Britain that controlled about 3/4 of the world at one point in world history. And you know what? They're still confronting this today, and now it is the entire West. What are they trying to do? Say they have enough since World War II of the Western overbearance and the fact that the West, led by the U.S., seems to be dominating the world, and they're pushing back. And Donald Trump seems surprised by this. Xi Jinping has been saying this as long as he has been in public life, and as long as Vladimir Putin has been saying that he wants to reconstruct the great Russian Empire. So should he be surprised? No. But if he is, it's because he hasn't been listening or paying any attention to what they've been saying.
I don't know if this part of the story matters to you, Rick. Obviously, China is not going to tell the history of World War II in the same way that the United States would, or even Russia for that matter. But does this sound like we're setting the stage for a summit between President Trump, President Xi?
Yeah, you hope so. Look, good things happen when world leaders meet across the table and can confront the challenges that they have with one another. It doesn't do us any good to ignore the growing influence of China in the region and across the globe, both economically and militarily. There are a lot of issues we have with the way China conducts itself in those spheres, and we should be prepared to confront them with that. Because if we are to peacefully coexist, which would be the goal, not to just assign ourselves the point in history where we are just convinced we have to go to war with China in order to preserve our way of life, that would be a very important meeting. But we hope that along the way that Donald Trump gets a crash course in history, because if we think China is going to bend over backwards to accommodate us in the world stage because we were on their side, in World War II, then he is really missing the point of today's geopolitics.
Great conversation and great analysis from our panel. That's Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzano, Bloomberg Politics contributors, who will return in our second hour. We still have to talk about domestic politics with Rick and Jeannie, including the big conversation today about Jeffrey Epstein in Washington. This did come up as well with the president in the Oval Office, and he brushed it off as a Democrat hoax, which is pretty big news considering the fact that Epstein's victims were holding a news conference only about an hour before he said that here in Washington, D.C. We'll welcome our global television audience to the conversation coming up at the top of the hour. Preeti Gupta will join us as well. We'll have...
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the vitamin D3. Vitamin D3 is a cofactor for gene expression. Vitamin D3 helps to absorb calcium, and vitamin D3 helps to get cells to go into apoptosis, especially if they're infected. Very important to take this, especially in the fall and the winter. Be prepared. And vitamin K2, MK7 molecule will help with your bone density and your cardiovascular. How does it work? It's going to help to absorb calcium. It stacks well with D3. Take in the calcium supplement, do the resistance training, and you're going to have denser bone. Stack these together, and you'll also be able to pull some of that calcium deposit around plaque formation and prevent further calcium depositing from happening, and that will help with your cardiovascular system. So please go to my store, get the vitamin D3 and the K2, stack them together to get max benefit. But remember, D3 helps cells to go into apoptosis, especially if they're infected. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Now, it is important to pay attention to this fall and this winter season. It's going to be problematic. Better be prepared. But if you're not, and you start having problems, you've been warned. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.